The City Council Committee on Administration and Finance, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, is meeting in person today, Monday, June 5th at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing fiscal year 2024 departmental operating budgets and associated capital improvement plan projects. Notice of this meeting was posted on May 31st, 2023 at 2:37 p.m. This meeting is being held in the City Council chambers at 93 Washington Street, Salem, Massachusetts, on the second floor. Individuals may listen or view the meeting remotely via Zoom by using webinar ID 813-2903-9517 and password 259418. Joining us tonight from the Committee on Administration and Finance are all members excluding Councilor Watson-Felt. Joining us from the Committee of the Whole, let's see, Councilor Morcillo, Councilor Cohen, Councilor Prosnowski, and Councilor Varela. Just as a reminder, we do have one item tonight that was rescheduled from a prior meeting last week. So joining us tonight instead of as originally scheduled will be our IT/GIS department, and I am going to allow Matt to go first since you were rescheduled into this evening, and then we'll get into the regular order. So please, you have the floor. Just let us know. Pretend none of us have ever met you. Let us know what it is you do, and then you can get into the numbers.
Well, good evening, and thank you for letting me jump the agenda a bit. I appreciate it. I'll pretend you've never met me, and I'll keep pretending that you've never met me. How's that? So I'm Matt Killen. I'm the Chief Information Officer. I oversee technology operations for general government, finance, public safety, and to some extent the school department. So we have a number of expenses included in the IT budget that provide services to the schools. We're a busy department taking care of the telephone systems throughout the city, internet access, cybersecurity, computers, software, access to the financial system, you name it, we do it, and we're glad to do it. That's probably the 30,000-foot flyover. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about the budget.
Can you fix my Duo app?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Duo later. Questions and comments from the committee? And I see there's some page flipping since we went a little bit out of order. Can give people a moment. Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my pre-questions, I guess I had before we came in for any discussion that I highlighted. One goal that you noted, or not goal, achievement that you noted for the past year, which I think we are all very grateful for, is the expansion of the hybrid meeting rooms and capacity. And you said one goal was you included the CLC Great Room. So thank you for that. My question was, how many rooms do we have available for hybrid meeting? Like, I know we have council chambers, CLC, and then in the annex, is there 1, 2, 3 meeting rooms available?
So there are 2 public meetings on the first floor. There's also a video conferencing room on the 3rd floor, which could be used for public meeting. Typically, they're not, just because of building access and security reasons. But there's also a second room at the CLC. I think it's called the boardroom. So I believe it's a total of 5.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. I know that was not easy.
Call from the school.
Yeah, so that's actually not a Zoom room, but they do rig that up for a Google Meet event, yes. So
Are you talking about school committee chambers? Yeah, okay. And then I had a question. I didn't know that last bullet for achievements was secure access to push updates to Waze and other navigation apps regarding street construction closures and other alerts. That was timely that you were moved to the same night as traffic and parking. But that was something that actually came up in one of our other meetings this year about like a street closure and having to change the navigation apps and all of that. So I'm curious, is it just Waze that you're linked with? Or I think Waze takes their data from Google Maps, or what's your role in that?
correct. So by getting that information into Waze, it actually pushes up to Google Maps and other services that rely on that platform. So historically, it was very, very difficult to get into there to push updates out, especially at the community level. So we were quite proud of getting that access, and it's worked out really well, especially during Halloween, which turned out to be crazy last year, as certainly you know better than I do.
Yeah, so if I may, I was just going to ask, that was my follow-up, was it utilized during Halloween season? Like, are the updates available to be that live? So like if, the police department closes down Derby Street much earlier than expected, is there like a partnership there that it's updated and pushed out? And
Yes, we have a partnership through the traffic and parking department as well as through public safety, so they can push that out not only on the Waze system, but also the My Salem app, which a number of the people in the city are using as well, to get those traffic reroute updates as they're posted.
thank you. And then my last question was, I noticed in the data, the website sessions, you're expecting them to go down a lot, it looks like. Is there a reason for that? And are there any perhaps future plans for updating our City of Salem website?
Yes and yes. So it's our expectation that with updates on COVID case counts and vaccinations and where to get a vaccination and all of those updates that were being regularly posted on the city website, that we're drawing a fair amount of traffic on their own. As those have waned, that traffic we anticipate will wane as well, and go back to something more normal, I guess, if there is a normal. And then, yes, we would like to pursue an update to the city's website. We last updated the site, I think it was in 2017, to move to a mobile aware site. The former salem.com had become kind of congested. So we did go to a cleaner look at that time, but it is time for a refresh.
My last question is, why wasn't my email working today? I'm just kidding.
That's a fair question. I can tell you Microsoft had a moment. It did. Microsoft had a couple of moments during the day, yeah.
Councilor Hapworth, are you going to explain what the moments were?
I did have a Microsoft question, not that specifically though. Just out of curiosity, the line item for software licensing for Microsoft was annual Microsoft licensing last year of $100,000, and then it moved to a new line item, just Microsoft software licensing. Did your contract type change, or is it just the line item changed? So did it go from like an annual 1 year contract to like a 3 year?
No, the contract is the same. It was just really cleaning up. There's a few cases where you'll see line items got zeroed out and duplicated in what we hoped was a little more clear language.
Okay. I'm just out of curiosity. Is it year by year that your
Yes.
Microsoft is paid for, not in 3 year?
Correct.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Councilor Marcillo.
Thank you, Chair. Councilor Hapworth, is that the best deal they can get? Okay. You should check on that.
Yeah, well, in fairness, I should say it's all through the Massachusetts Technology State Contract, so we do get locked-in pricing, and it really is multi-year pricing, but because of the potential for non-appropriation, we really try to keep it to a single year.
That's what you need to check into, the Microsoft.
Yeah, under the state contract, it really is locked for 3 years, yeah.
I'm really curious about the Waze app, and which departments are able to update Waze?
Traffic and parking and police, I believe, are the two.
So have we ever gotten requests to do it because people are using small neighborhood roads when they shouldn't be?
I have not.
I'm kind of looking at both of you. This seems like a really good opportunity to clean some of that up. I don't know if they will do that, but yeah, Waze sends people down little neighborhood streets that they shouldn't be. So anyways, my ears perked up when you have that line item about Waze. So you'll use this for instance, the closing of part of Essex Street for Bella Verona, that sort of thing can be pushed out to Waze, and we can do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Any sort of traffic, where it could be a engineering street repair, could be a parade, could be a public safety issue. Anything that would impact the traffic flow, we have the ability to push that out.
So is there a length of time that's required? Like, is it, if, let's say it's a 1 day thing, is that something that can be pushed out for 1 day and then go back to normal? Or is it a certain length of time that's minimum?
You can typically set the length of the notice. Like, so if it's going to be an 8-hour road repair, you can put a 10-hour notice on it.
Yeah.
If you anticipate it'll be a 2-day road closure, you can do that for sure. Yeah.
Wow, that's good to know. Thank you.
record show we've been joined by Councilor Dominguez. Further questions and comments? Councilor Prasnewski.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Thank you, Matt. Your department's been extremely patient with me so many times, so I appreciate all the help that you've given me trying to navigate some of the stuff that's I sort of didn't grow up with, but sort of getting used to. When we had our meeting with planning, I asked Tom Daniels if there was a possibility that we could put our projects into folders, that so when somebody clicked on a project in the city, they would see exactly where the status was for all the projects. If something was at the beginning, it would show that, the land was purchased by so-and-so on such and such a date, and this is the next step. Or if it's further along, it would be like a thermometer. You could go through page and page and find out where the project stands. I think it would save the councilors, the public, and planning a lot of phone calls if people could just get in on that. The way that you have to do it now is you have to jump around from the department to department. If you want to see a map, you have to take a look at the GIS map. If you need something else, you have to go to the building inspector's office or over to planning, and sometimes it takes an awful lot of time and you still don't get what you need. So my question to you, is that something that's could be done with minimal work, or is it something that's a big job?
I think we'd want to take a look at that a little bit, but if we're talking just a sort of thermometer indicator on, 3, 5, 7 projects, I would think that that's pretty easy lift, I guess. More of a deep dive could be a little bit difficult, but a 20,000-foot flyover just to get a sense of, the 3 projects on the page, this one's green, that one's yellow, what have you, I think that should be pretty straightforward.
And we will be able to link you over to the different places where you'd have to go to get other information, such as a conceptual drawing or whose hands it is now. Is it DRB? Is it planning? Is it how far along the project is? But just a suggestion, but I just think it would make things easier for quite a few of the folks. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of the committee, through you too, Mr. Killen. I just had a question about the phone communication cellular telephone service for the amount of $40,000 for fiscal year 2024. Can you explain that?
Sure. So entering fiscal 23, we transferred the management of cellular devices and telephones, data plans, so forth from purchasing over to IT. And so that continues into 24. Is that the essence? Okay.
Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I just noticed another line item under personnel for the new request for Microsoft 365 administrator. Do we really think we're going to get someone at that 35? Or is that like an accounting thing that it's half of the request?
It's yes.
Okay, seeing nothing further, I will take a motion. I will point out that we have general admin to approve, and then we have fixed costs in its own table. Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the general admin personnel budget line item in the amount of $882.46 and the expenditures line item in the amount of $12,500 for a grand total of $894,546.
Councilor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the IT general admin personnel budget in the amount of $882,046, expenditures in the amount of $12,500 for a total of $894,546, seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor? 3 plus my own. Matter carries. Councilor Hapworth.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the IT fixed cost expenditures line item in the amount of $867.50.
Councilor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the IT fixed cost expenditures in the amount of $860,750, seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor? 3 plus my own. That also carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's an amazing alarm. It knew exactly when I was going to call you up. It's incredible. We'll return to our regular order, and we will go to electrical. Mr. Giardi, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, councilors. My name is John Giardi. I'm the city electrician for the city of Salem. Most of you know me. Oh, come on. Throw that thing away, will you? Okay. And basically what we do is we take care of wire inspections, we take care of fire alarm, we take care of traffic signals, and we take care of the street lighting. Just over the weekend, Memorial Day weekend, we had a tragedy down in Winter Island. That was one of our latest ventures. What happened was a contractor was in the area prior to us going down to try and help them out for the weekend and bringing more power to the RV vehicle site. And what happened was one of the contractors dug up one of our conduits, which cost us a severe amount of time. It took the electrical department, the DPW, joint ventures. It was about a week to a week and a half before we could get it all restored. But we made a temporary power hookup for Winter Island for the Memorial Day weekend so they keep operating. And it's just about done. Ray has to go down now and pour some concrete over the conduits and backfill it, and we should be done. And latest ventures that we've had, Lev Rollins Street and Boston Street, the traffic control is in, the lights are working. They're the wrong buttons, though. Okay, they work, but they're not the right buttons. We have to go back and install the right ones. There was a mishandling of a couple of push buttons. They're supposed to be ADA compliant, and they weren't. So that'll be done within a couple of days. Another major change that we're making is Boston and Grove Streets. We're going to split the phases at Boston and Grove Street. What happens is that when you're coming out of Grove Street and you're coming down Nichols Street, Grove Street's got a green light, Nichols Street's got a green light, but then Boston's got a red light. So when you come around that corner, most people blow through their red light where the green lights, people are coming up Grove Street, pretty most near collisions a lot of times. So we're going to make Grove Street one phase, we're going to make Nichols Street another phase. So that's going to make that intersection safe. We're also installing 16-inch countdown timers, which people seem to understand better and like better, and they're able to cope with the traffic better. Being that when they see walk across the street, they start, they can see 14 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, rather than somebody flashing. They don't know when the hand's going to stop, but they know how many seconds are left on the timer. We found that to be very effective in traffic control. So we're continuing that along Boston Street. So those will all be 16-inch heads. We're working on street lighting, which we're going to be upgrading Boston Street, we're going to be upgrading Lafayette Street, and North Street. Those are our three main focuses because the lights are failing. We have new ones that the contractor was bound to give us under the agreement. So now it's just a matter of us installing them. So as soon as we can do that, we will. And we've been working with the fire department on many issues, the police department. We keep busy. We're down at DPW right now doing an upgrade to their lighting. So hopefully we can get that completed within a week or so. And if there's anything else you guys would like to hear about, please let me know.
Thank you for that overview. And thank you for the change at Nichols and Grove in Boston. It's going to bring a lot of peace and well-being into my neighborhood and into my home.
And we've been working with Dave Kuchowski too. Dave's good parking director. Megan we had talked about that, keeping in touch with each other, and we've been doing some joint ventures together. He's upgrading basically like the Salem 5 lot over there, the Church Street, so that's gonna be improved. And one of the other things the guys did at the electrical department to save the city some money is that we lost the service at, going up to, oh, I can't remember the name of the street, going to, not on street, by the cemetery. What's the name of that street? No, which one, Meg? Right, yeah, that was right there by the Green Lawn Cemetery, okay? And what happened was, I have pictures of that too, and somebody ran into the controller. So our guys had to do a little bit of work there. We had the 2 trucks, piecing that together. So.
Councilor Marcello.
Thank you, Chair. Replacing the streetlights, that whole project, how long is that going to take to replace all the heads?
We can't do it all at once, only because we're in between like emergencies and all that, Pat. So if we stood at it, we could probably do like a street in a week, but we can't do that. Hopefully we can. I mean, if we don't have any situations that, prevent us from doing our daily work, yeah, we can. And I hope to get it done by the end of the summer, all 3 streets, so.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about Jefferson Ave too.
Yeah.
Trying to get that lighting improved also.
Oh, where was that, Matt?
Jefferson Ave?
Yes.
Especially near Wilson?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Jefferson Avenue will be completed too.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
I didn't mention that one, but thanks for bringing it up.
Okay, great.
Okay.
You have under your recent accomplishments, you talk about Woodlands Road project,
Yeah,
but we don't own those lights yet, right?
no,
Okay, because that light still is not fixed.
correct. What's going on with that, Pat, is that National Grid owns the lights. In their registry, there's only one lady that takes care of the lights from Salem all the way to Gloucester, okay? And she goes from Salem all the way up to North Andover. And the paperwork is unbelievable, what you have to fill out, for streetlights and stuff like that. And we don't own any decorative poles because, like, we own the aluminum poles. We bought all the lights on the wooden poles. So we don't have the material to even repair those lights that they put on those developments, okay? Because they're all fiberglass poles, with concrete bases, and all ours are either wooden or metal. So we're trying to stay away from those type of lights because the installation is okay, but it's not great, so, and they're gonna have problems with those later on if they don't take care of them, but, so that's why the city doesn't wanna be involved with that.
Well, so that's interesting then. I don't want to get too off topic, but when they asked the city to take over that street, what are we going to do with those lights then?
The lights stay the way they are.
So the developer will have control over the lights?
Oh, no, once we accept the street, we pay the bill, but the lights will stay the same. In other words, we don't own them. National Grid owns them,
Oh, so
Okay.
everything will have to
Yeah.
go through National
Yep.
Grid. Yikes. Okay.
which is good.
Well, it's good for us, but it's not great for them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It should be. I mean, that's what we need to do, is get them in here once in a while and hold them accountable. That's the whole thing.
Okay.
And you can submit an order to
Bring
talk
them in.
to, yeah, definitely.
Okay. I'm
How come?
I'm
if
making
you
a
do
note of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I have one question on your expenditures. The maintenance for traffic signals, the request was 52.8 and
Yeah,
you got 33.
correct.
What's that
Yeah.
gonna mean?
Go ahead. Was that? Okay. Well, we moved it to the capital plan.
Okay. All right, great.
Good question. I brought that up only because the material is getting so expensive, you're talking 20, 30%, hikes, material. So then Anna saw that and she said, that should be in the capital improvement budget, and I agree. So,
Okay, that's fair. The other thing is the, your data, your outcomes and performance.
yeah,
I noticed that electrical repairs to public buildings went from 25 to 100 that's estimated for this coming year. What's the story there?
it shouldn't be that for this coming year. Yeah. That should have been 10 probably, yeah. Yeah, that's wrong, Pat.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, thanks.
okay. It's all right.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of the committee. To you, Mr. Giardi. First of all, I want to thank you for your responsiveness. There's several people who live around Lafayette Street who are sight impaired, and I didn't realize, as maybe other people don't, that when the signal counts down, it's important to have a vocal signal, and the people in the neighborhood really appreciate you fixing
Thank you.
those. Yeah. I basically have one question. You have, money set aside for 1.5 inspectors, wiring inspectors.
Right.
And as you and Mr. Racone and I used to talk a lot about the solar inspections, I'm assuming that are hoping you're getting inundated with air source heat pump permits.
Yeah.
And my concern is that many electricians who install them don't understand that, a panel, even if they have 200 amp, cannot accommodate putting that much, even though they have a disconnect. So my question is, have you been seeing hopefully a spike in permitting?
Oh,
Request for
positively,
permitting?
yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I
As a
hope you're
matter
going
of
to see a
fact-
lot more too.
Yeah, Mark and I, keep on that, and we've noticed the influx of permits, While you're on that, okay, the position and a half, and okay, so you understand too that I did talk to the mayor, the former mayor, Kim Driscoll, about adding a full-time position because we couldn't get somebody part-time doing electrical inspection. So it was incumbent upon us that we would hire somebody full-time. And the mayor did agree to it, but we didn't have enough time to really finalize that. So it's something I would hope that everybody would keep in mind, that we could use that whole position. And we've got 3 fire inspectors, we got 3 building inspectors. I don't know how many health inspectors we have, Dave, but we go in all the same buildings like everybody else. We need help.
Well, I'm just going to speak, personally, if we're going to be a greener city, we're going to need a lot more heat pumps.
Right.
And that's going to dictate, when we did Solarize in 2014, that was 70 permits that you had to go and inspect. And that's a lot of
Right.
work. Because people have to, it's not just going out and looking at the specs, it's coming back and making sure they did it right. So, maybe what you provide is, the increase in the number of permits that are being requested would be maybe a way to get, acceptance of the funding. Just a suggestion,
Okay,
since you've been suggesting to
thank you,
us. Yeah.
Counselor. All right, appreciate that.
Councilor Appworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on a question about Councilor Morcillo's question around the Woodlands Road lights. If a light goes out there, should residents contact National Grid or the city, or how does that all work?
National Grid, yeah.
Do we have that anywhere else in the city where National Grid is my ignorance here? Do we have-
No. With the National Grid is our provider, and that's the only person you call for those type of lights. Okay.
Where else do we have lights like that?
DiBiase's, Osborne Hill Drive.
So
okay.
typically outlying developments.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
On the I guess downtown or closer in town, are the two types of lights Cobra Head and decorative? Is that how I
Yes,
understand that?
Yes.
What is the what determines where those go? Is it a city directive that when streets get redone, we moves to the decorative lights, or is that a case by case project? by
Well,
project?
it's case by case, and it involves the planning department, it involves the city engineer, it involves the city electrician, and it involves the council, to approve it.
There's not like a
one person
plan or
doesn't-
a directive that each
No,
time this
one
happens. this is-
person doesn't make the decision.
Gotcha.
It's a majority of people.
Okay. Does this money include, so there was a decorative light on Bridge Street that's been sort of hanging out over the road
Yes.
after somebody hit it, I think about a year ago. Does this include money to repair that? Because I think
Yes.
the concern was there wasn't money at the time.
But that's an insurance case, Ty. What happened was, that's happened a while back, and it takes almost a year to get something like that, replaced, because we don't inventory those lights. Like if I went out to buy one of those lights right now, it would cost us probably like $3,000, $4,000 just to inventory the luminaire and the pole.
The
Never mind the
light
pole.
itself or the
Yeah.
entire pole is
The pole and the light, yeah.
$3,000?
Yeah, at least,
That actually
yeah.
sounds low to me. I don't know. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Dominguez.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, speaking about that, well, I don't mean to take up everybody's time, but the city desperately needs a place to store things, like as far as material goes. We do not have any place, like the garage at Jefferson Avenue is failing, okay? The doors are open, the water goes in. It's pretty dire situation in that department. We could respond quicker, like if we had a place to put all this stuff, we could, stockpile it. And if something happens, we could take a piece, go out and do it. But we can't do that because letting them sit there and rust all day long is not the right way to do it. So if you guys can think of a site that we could either get a couple of storage containers that we could drop off and we could put material inside those, I'm open to all suggestions.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I've been a member of the committee. Thank you, Mr. John, for being here.
Welcome,
And
Counselor.
also for your service, which I witnessed, and I concur with Councilor Cohen. The response are very, very quick. Most of the time that I call you, you respond very quick. So thank you so much for that. I have a couple of questions in mind, and I see that in your goal and objective, you accomplish a lot, which is pretty good. And I just wanted to ask you, and my question is going toward more than information than anything else, not only for me, but maybe for the general public who is watching these meetings, which is very informative. My first question in regard to the smart traffic system and the more ADA compliance citywide that you mentioned here in the book. You said that Raleigh Plaza is already being fully upgraded.
Yes.
My question is, in the other area of the city, there is any other area that you are working with the ADA compliance, and what is the percentage or accomplishment on that you already have?
Okay, what we're trying to do is we want to fully revamp North Street. That needs some serious work on North Street, okay? With our decorative lights, they've been there over 10 years. They're failing, and we have to add some street lights. I had talked to Councilor Stout, and we talked about that, and that's one of the upgrades that we're going to do. So we're going to add some more lights to what's existing already, too.
Good to hear that. And the other one that I have is in the comprehensive short-term and long-term plan to move people, traffic, back and forth, safety. That's one of the main issues that we have. Traffic is been addressed from many directions. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned here that you are working on that plan. Can you please explain a little bit more what is that plan consist of?
Okay. The smart signal plan, okay. Basically, phase one was like, we went from Lafayette Street to Harbor Street, and we went to Lafayette and Dow Street, okay? That was Lafayette and Derby Street too. That was all part of smart signal phase one, okay? Phase two is basically we went from Washington Street, Mill Hill Canal, We're working our way out to the MPDA station, okay, we went that way. Then the lights at the west ramp and the lights at Church Street and Bridge Street, that signal is on the smart signal program. We've got a little problem with that, but it's almost, fully operational. But that's phase 2. Phase 3 will be, we want to bring in the Hawthorne Boulevard, Congress Street, and New Derby Street, okay? And that'll complete, the smart signal program.
Is that financially mentioned here in the budget? I don't see any items that
Right
we can...
now, we have enough money to complete phase 2 and probably part of phase 3.
Good to know.
And capital planning, yeah.
Pretty good. Well, my last question to you, I always end with this. Do you have enough resources allocated in this year budget to cover your goal completely, or do you think you might need some more money in the future?
We're probably going to have to come back for a little more money because the time it took, there was a problem with the vendor. At one point, he submitted an invalid vendor number, okay? So we had to take the smart signal program and rebid it, okay? They're due to be open the 16th, the bids, okay? So then we'll know better where we stand. And if the contractor holds his bid price, if he wins, okay, he may not win, we might have to deal with somebody else. We should be okay,
Great. Thank you.
okay? You're welcome.
I will, just because the topic came up, I think everybody will see, if you look in the 5-year capital plan, the Smart Signal project is in there, due to come back for a significant amount more money in '25. So it is planned. Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Being a member of the committee, through you too, Mr. Giardi, thank you for all you do. You've been in this job longer than I've been alive, so I appreciate it. My question is for you, concerning our streetlights. Have those all been somewhat converted to LED, or are we still operating mostly on metal halide or high-pressure sodium?
No, they've been all converted to
So,
LED.
all right. My question is, I know LEDs are still kind of a new technology. Concerning the maintenance and how much they do break down, do you see a cost savings for the city as concerning just the viability of LEDs? Like we're saving money as far as maintenance. We're spending less on maintenance of these lights as well?
Yes, I mean, you have to maintain these lights a lot less than you would metal halide or sodium vapor. But with the way costs are running now, like if we have to go out and buy some, we haven't bought any lights for a while because we've had plenty in inventory. And plus the manufacturer now had to come up with some new ones for the ones that are failing. So they're supposed to last 10 years, okay? $10,000 basically, 10 years. And we're on year 7 with those, and they were failing, so that's why they had to make good for the lights that failed. So, but cost-wise, I haven't figured out how much more the new ones are gonna cost. That's a good question.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for all that you do, Mr. Giardi. You're definitely always the first one to respond to my many inquiries, so I appreciate that. I just had a quick question, which has been touched upon here. This is the North Street lighting.
Yes.
So I wanted to confirm, because there was emails going back and forth back in December about updating to the LED lighting, because specifically at nighttime in the rain, and you went and did a full inventory of the street. But it wasn't just replacement of the LED lighting; it was also adding a few
Yes.
new. And I just want to confirm that that is included
case.
in that total, because I think you said 6,000 for that.
I can send you a list, Meg, okay?
Okay. Do we have a timeline on that work? Because I thought that would be started already. Or
I
has
thought
it
it
been
would too,
started?
but we've got inundated with calls. I've been working 2 guys short for almost a year and a half. So I think we're catching up on the fire alarm problems that we had. We were failing in the fire alarm department. The traffic lights were not where they should be, okay? We're almost getting back to normal. So like I'm trying to like keep repairing what we have failing and keep up with the new work that's coming aboard. But I hope to complete it all by the end of summer as far as the upgrade of the lighting, so before we get into dark hours, you know.
The sun is up a lot later now, which is nice.
Right.
One other follow-up question I had, which was money that we've appropriated before, and I believe it has been fixed, is the Leslie's Retreat Park, and the problem was the salt water getting to the lights that were corroding, all of that.
Yes.
Is that resolved now? Are we going to expect to have the same problem in 10 years with the salt water on the wires, or?
Now, where were you talking, Counselor?
Leslie's Retreat Park.
Oh, yeah, that's bad, because, I mean, they're on the water all the time. I mean, there's nothing really we can do about that, except, you know, try to maintain them. What we did do to make it safer for everybody, we went from 277 volts to 120 volts. You know, like, we split it up, because what was happening, like, everything was burning up, you know, at the higher voltage, like with the water and everything. And plus, if somebody got a shock, I mean, it's fatal, like at 277, you know, 480 volts, you know. I mean, 120 you can survive, but we make sure that the lights are all grounded. We go through there once in a while to make sure that it's safe. So, but I would like to see all new wiring someday, but, you know, that's something that we have to discuss, you know.
Councilor Prosnewski.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of the committee. First, I want to thank John for all the years that you, just like everyone here has said, you're the first one to answer our calls all the time, regardless, and things get done in a jiffy. I don't know how you do it with the people that you. There's only one red truck with a boom on it in the city, and you'd think that seeing it all the time, that we have 10 of them, but you're out there, whether it's hanging banners or lights or fixing this, fixing that.
That's another thing we do too. Thank you, Counselor. Yeah.
Lots and lots of banners.
Yeah.
I get that. My question to you is just about the common. I know that there's been talk about changing the lighting or adding lighting to the common, some perimeter lighting. I know that there was some talk about putting white lights on all the trees on the perimeter for a while. Can you give us an update on if there are any changes or any plans for the common this year?
I haven't heard of any, Counselor. They were talking about, you know, the Common Association and the people in the area wanted to change the lighting, you know, so that we looked at them and we said, okay, here's how much it costs to change them. Here's what we can do to help you out, like clean them and, you know, restore them. And we did that. That's the second time we restored those lights in the common. To replace those, I can't tell you how much it would cost. And I don't know what the Historical Society would do, like as far as like what we'd have to install. You know, we'd have to answer a few questions before we go ahead, Counselor.
Okay, so there is nothing on
Nothing that I know
nothing
in
on
the
paper
works,
plan.
Conrad. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So seeing no more comments and questions, and I think I didn't ask you if you had anything you wanted to highlight in capital improvement, but we already talked about the smart signals. I think that was the only major thing I saw in there. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight about capital needs before we move to the approval, John?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's a few things. The ADA walk signal buttons, we were talking about adding some of those, okay? $10,000, okay? And the Ford F-650 is in the capital improvement, okay? And the smart signal expansion, and, right, the 20,000, okay, okay.
Okay. Councilor Marcillo?
Thank you. Just going back to the replacement of lights when they've been hit by a car or
Okay.
on Highland Avenue, there's a cross signal that was hit and needs to be replaced. Do we not have the money in the budget to order it and then get reimbursed by insurance?
That's a good question. The answer is right off the cuff. In the beginning of the fiscal year, we could probably do it. But in the middle of the fiscal year, we'd probably have a little hard time funding that,
Yeah,
based upon,
It's probably a question that's higher up than you, but if safety signals are destroyed in a car accident, and we know that insurance is eventually going to cover them, I just don't know why we're waiting for insurance. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think we need to rethink that.
okay?
Yeah, and that's aside from your stock,
Point
which is a
well taken.
really good question. Your place to store things where it doesn't get ruined is a whole other question, which I agree with. But we can order the stuff and replace it, and yeah,
Right,
thank you.
okay. We can work that out, Counselor, okay?
Okay. Looking for a motion. Counselor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the electrical personnel line item in the amount of $436,394, electrical expenditures in the amount of $445,997 for a grand total of $882,391.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the electrical personnel budget in the amount of $436,394, expenditures as $445,997 for a total of $882,391, seconded by Counselor Stott. All those in favor? 3 plus my own, that carries. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, councilors. Have a great night. Appreciate your help and support. You're welcome. Thank you. I apologize for the phone, too.
Public property is next on our list, but we had a lot of discussion just now about traffic and light signals because we were talking about electrical. If people have an interest, we can move to that next if it's fresh, or if you want to just keep moving down the list. Anybody have any feelings one way or the other? All right.
Yeah, we can skip public property because
All right. Why don't we jump into traffic and parking right away then?
Dave, you're up.
Little mixed blessing here. You're in the chute sooner, maybe you'll get out sooner. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Council, for the opportunity. David Kucharski, Salem Traffic and Parking Director. Our department, including myself, consists of 23 staff, the bulk of which focus on mainly parking operations. We have garage supervisors, parking enforcement, as well as maintenance and security. Myself and 3 other staff focus a lot on more traffic, transportation-related matters, our traffic calming program, as well as our mobility programs, including the Salem Skipper, Blue Bikes, and bike accommodations in general. You notice from our budget, there's an increase in overall salary. This is an attempt to pay a better wage for our garage supervisors, who in many ways are sort of our ambassadors to the city, dealing with residents and visitors on a daily basis and just trying to advocate for them to make a better wage. It's also to address Mr. Finley, who is currently our mobility coordinator, but just given all the efforts he's doing in terms of gathering data, analyzing data in order to help us, you, commission, with decision-making, I thought it made sense to redesignate him as a transportation data analyst. And I'm glad to see that it's in the budget right now. Also looking at a little more overtime in our budget. We do a lot of overtime, obviously, during October, but we have found, especially moving on with COVID, and when people do get sick, because we're somewhat unique from some other departments where we need to have someone at the garage, so we will ask other supervisors to come in and cover shifts because we do need people. We had some adjustments in staff this year. Happy to report that we finally do have someone full-time at South Harbor garage as a supervisor. He started at the end of this past month, and so we're at full capacity, so happy to report that. Other changes overall in the budget reflects some changes to our contracted services. There was a decrease. This is to reflect the fact that we've sunsetted the Get Around program, and we're no longer hiring a fleet manager to oversee those vehicles. As you know, those vehicles are being repurposed through various departments. We're also, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I get this. Also a change in overall building maintenance, a slight shift as we've done more improvements to the garage. We're not putting as much in emergency repairs when things break down and leaking, and we're hoping to move forward with more robust capital programs in the coming years. Happy to pause there unless you want me to touch base on the capital.
Why don't we pause there before capital? Quick question. You mentioned a moment ago the garage site supervisors. Are those site-specific assignments, or do they move between sites?
The daytime supervisors are specific to Museum Place Garage. Some of the weekend and evening supervisors go back and forth. And as I mentioned, we now have a full-time person who's there really during the day and during the day on the weekends at South Harbor.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go first. Thank you, Mr. Gorczewski, for all that you do, and for always responding to my emails as well, as touchy as they can be sometimes. We've been through a lot, you and I, but it's exciting stuff. I just had a few questions. The first one was under recent, or a couple of them are under recent accomplishments. For the one of them noted finalized the implementation of the community car share program in the fall of 2022. But that's the one that was canceled, right? Okay, I just wanted to make, because I thought that was earlier than 2022, so I just wanted to make sure that was the same one. There's a lot noted about the traffic calming applications, the blue bike services, a lot of just programs that you're kind of juggling and managing. I think those would be great on like your outcome and performance data level, like how many traffic calming applications have you received? How many have you responded to? Like, I think those numbers are going to be very impressive, and just to see the influx that you get those are there, and what your goals are in responding to those as well would be really good to see. I mean, I'm really curious how many traffic calming applications you received, and I'm sure you have that data somewhere. Similar to blue bikes, like how many stations we have, how many bikes we have in service. I know those numbers change a lot, but it's really great to see that data. And then finally, for data comment, the residential parking, because your department handles that process, right? Like the applications for handing out the stickers and all of that.
Correct.
I'm like really curious how many we have, because that's, I'm sure, a huge workload on your department. So how many are issued each year? How many are requested each year? That just seems like that's like a huge work lift. For doing that. So it'd be really interesting to see what the numbers are there for that, along with claims. And then finally, I guess more for discussion topic, it's interesting to see the parking citation issued between 2021 to 2022. The number climbed dramatically, which is awesome. I think we're all probably happy to see that. Maybe not those that received the tickets, but we're happy to see that. And I'm curious if you could explain what your footprint is for issuing those citations. Like what does your department cover versus what does the police department cover in regards to issuing tickets and citations, and what kind of things do you look for? And what is your area? Like, do any of your members go outside of downtown, or is it just a specific area that's covered?
So we cover the downtown area, all the metered spaces, both on street and in the parking lots, as well as all the residential permitted streets, both within the downtown area as well as throughout the city. So any street that's been designated for resident permit parking, our staff goes out on a regular basis. We do have a vehicle that's used to go to those locations that are maybe too far for someone to walk there and back. We also cover the Willows, mainly during the busier seasons, April through October, as well as Forest River Park, now that the Park and Rec Commission has approved paid parking there. So we've expanded to that as well. Again, our hours are 8 to 6 most days, so those are the hours that we're enforcing. We try to encourage people, if they have issues outside those hours, to call the police's non-emergency line. Mainly it's focused around resident parking during those hours.
So if I may just follow up to that. So the citations are for metered parking and then residential parking. Is there ever any discussion or plan about other, I guess, parking violations or a process to maybe help with those? Because downtown obviously has metered and parking lots and residential parking areas, but outside of downtown, our parking issues are more a car is parked on the sidewalk or a car is parked too close to the corner. And those are the messages I get all the time. And there's literally no enforcement of those items. And I don't necessarily think those are items that should be immediately ticketed or cited, but there's nothing. So I'm wondering if there's ever been a discussion about some kind of program or notification process and who would be responsible for that.
So I might have missed, but we do cover if someone's parked too close to an intersection or a driveway or a hydrant. That is part of what enforcement does when they are doing resident or metered parking. It's just part of their overall approach.
But the location is downtown, though, for that, right?
In resident areas as well. So if they're on a residential street, say around the university campus, on a street that's been designated, they do, if someone's parked too close to an intersection, or driveway or hydrant or crosswalk, they will issue a citation.
But would they only be in that neighborhood because there's so in a ward that does not have any residential parking, they are not there unless if we call, do they go there? I'm just trying to get clarification on this.
As other examples, working with Councilor Morcillo on Proctor Street when we redid the striping on that roadway and we instituted traffic calming measures. We also put out information about not parking on the sidewalk, which was a known problem there. That's still something we do on a regular basis and go out to those locations. If we find out there's a service zone where we find residents are parking in order to run into Dunkin' Donuts, we'll go out. Boston Street is one example. So we do try to make these part of regular runs, but we only currently have one vehicle, so sometimes it's challenging to get to these areas that are sort of outside. My understanding is that with the new cars that are being repurposed, we'll be getting 2 vehicles, and one of my focuses is to work with Mr. Sulloway, our parking operations director, to designate more areas where we want to do sort of this targeted work. I'd also say that we start with warning sometimes. Sometimes if someone's been parking on the sidewalk for a decade, we don't usually just start ticketing, but we try to start with education and take that approach. Or if we've changed something significantly through a capital project or like a traffic calming, we'll still just start with, this is now the new normal, please follow these rules.
Okay. Thank you. And then my last question on enforcement or parking is, I just want to reiterate or confirm the process with the Halloween parking overlay citation. So my big problem with that last year was not the lots that requested the permit and were regulated, which falls under your department, but the lots that were not. They were often side by side of each other, and your department was out making sure that the lots that had the regulation were following the rules, but there was no one kind of following up on those. And I understand that that part doesn't fall under your purview, but I hope going forward that the process that was discussed of those that are out checking the permanent lots will also then report or maybe fill out a form and provide it to the inspector. I really hope that that's the process, will be the process going forward in place for this year.
Yes, I did have those discussions with Ms. Renard as well as Tom St. Pierre before he left, and I was speaking with Mayor Pangalo this morning about that and having a meeting with the acting building commissioner, just so we're on the same page that if parking enforcement does see something, they would take a photo to document it and then provide it to the building commissioner's office so that they could follow up with either a warning or a citation.
Awesome, thank you. And then finally, my last one. Again, thank you for everything that you do. And I think your department also puts out a lot of great material and a lot of great educational material and just informational material. Like that FAQ for North Street, 90% of my replies, I just go to that and like copy the information that's on there. So my only comment in that regard, other than a thank you for putting together that great information, is to try to get it, like push it out more in some regard, in some manner. I don't know if we can utilize the City of Salem Facebook page or Twitter or some other method of just continuing to push that information out, because it's almost like people never see it or something. And I, understand that frustration because I'm constantly sending the same thing out as well. But it's really great information that you guys are creating. We just need to get it out as much as possible. So,
Understood.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Also, I want to say thank you to you and your department. Really hard job and a lot of work, so I appreciate that. For one of the goals and objectives, finalize the contract to provide the license plate recognition software to assist with enforcement of resident permit parking. Are those the readers, the plate readers that have been discussed, and what does that look like moving forward? Like, what assistance will that be? How far in the future is that? Yeah, just a little more info on that. Thank
Sure.
you.
So the funds for that are in the capital requests to build a platform where essentially residents would go now to register themselves. Right now we have a very basic system, but most people still come into either the annex or the parking office to get their permits. This would create a better platform or portal for people to go in, log themselves, and be able to purchase based on plate. It would no longer be a sticker or a hang tag. Everything would be license plate based. The equipment that would go on the vehicles would then be able to go down a particular street and be able to read all the plates and determine that person has a permit, that person has a visitor pass for a certain number of days. So right now we're in the process of working with Passport, who provides us with our mobile payment option at the meters and lots to build a contract. Because of the interface between the permits and citation, we were going to be working to switch over our citation programs, and I've had these discussions with Councilor McCarthy when he was acting mayor, as well as Ms. Freeman, that we have to make sure we're getting all this information in a row, because it's going to be changing a lot of things in other departments, working with police as well. My goal is to have a contract finalized later this year and start the permit program at the beginning of next calendar year, sort of get us through October, and then start the program there, where there's going to be a lag time where people are still going to have the material tags. So really start at January 2024. That's my overall goal, is to have all that in place and start it then.
Thank you. Yeah, so it makes sense to start when it's quiet, because it sounds like it will be a big change, and it sounds like it will be impactful and really helpful.
Thank you.
If I could. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is going to, sorry. This is something that Dave and I have been talking about for years, I think, and I think that with the repurposing of the cars and the 2 cars coming back from the fire department, the extra money involved there to help offset the costs for the license plate readers, this will be a game changer for resident parking and for enforcement during the month of October. Unfortunately, won't make it for this year, but the ability for 2 identical cars, all striped out. If you've ever been to Beverly has one. Just to be able to go down the street and to be able to tell right away whether or not that car is supposed to be there, whether it's, and so when you get those phone calls, or the department gets the phone calls, they, instead of sending a car down to the Willows and getting someone out of the car and doing a sweep, walking around, they can just drive right through and instantaneously be able to tell who's not where they're supposed to be. So I think it's going to be a game changer. I think it's going to obviously be a big educational piece moving forward. But with regards to enforcement of resident sticker parking, it's going to be a big help to the department and for all those councilors that have resident parking in their wards, that it's going to be the ability to be able to go out and enforce at a quicker pace, and in order to get more satisfaction out of the fact that these are actually going to be taken care of more rapidly, I think is going to be a big boom. So I know Dave's been working really hard to try to make this happen as quickly as he can, but I think it does make sense to roll it out at the start of the next calendar year. Hopefully everything's in place by then. And it's going to be a learning curve, but at the same time, as someone alluded to the fact that, how much money do we spend on stickers and people coming and writing them all out and documenting the stickers and what number goes with who. Once it's all app-based, either with online or with a phone call, I think it's going to facilitate the program, and it's going to help all of us and the residents when it comes to enforcement. So I want to thank Dave for trying to work and keep listening to me as I've been pushing this for a long time. But it's going to be nice to see it come into realization soon. And hopefully for next October, hopefully it won't make it for this one, but that'll be another one that will really help during enforcement during the month of October. So.
Thank you. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of the committee. I really appreciate all your good work, including some of the field trips that Councilor Prozniewski and I have taken with you and Lieutenant Tucker. Couple of things. I think it's really excellent. Sometimes we've had some situations where you've sent out surveys to residents, and I think even just telling them that they're going to receive a survey and they're going to have some impact on what's going to happen, I think is terrific. Getting the 2 extra vehicles for enforcement is great. I mean, I'm not the only one, Lafayette and Canal Street, it's almost impossible to see oncoming traffic, and it's dangerous. And I do very much appreciate you're always using the complete streets, pedestrians first approach. Regarding the permit parking, it says in the synopsis that about the license-based system. And I've had people ask me about this without, I think they're knowing that this is something that's going to be in place. Is the intention someday to allow people not to pay for the resident parking like the guest passes, or is to maintain that and just will be easier to track with the license plates?
Are you asking me there still be a fee to get a permit? I'm anticipating there would still be, because there will still be processing, and
Right.
we'd still be paying for the platform, and then the company that will maintain the site for us and change it, as well as for visitor passes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm not sure why some people think that because they live somewhere that, that they shouldn't pay for the benefit of having resident parking when it's applicable. I know you have money in your budget and going forward to increase the quantity of speed humps. I know in the neighborhood that has them in Ward 5, it's almost, as you know, unanimous. You're about to do the permanent ones, except I think Gardner Street's being delayed just for utility work, but it's almost 100% that people appreciate those. And I think because of it, we're getting, as you know, and I'm sure everyone else is, requests for more. So I'm assuming that you have a plan for how you're going to roll out more, and the more information that we have in advance, the better.
Well, I think that we're trying to test those out, still follow that temporary humps or cushions, see how it goes that first season, make any tweaks, and then if we're seeing the results and the majority of the butters are in favor, then we would move forward with installation. I would say the challenging thing is, I've said during commission meetings, we could have all the resources in the world. It's the challenge of getting contractors and people in place to do the work and oversee the work has always been our main challenge.
Yep. Just one more thing, two-part question. Is there the planned work that you have on Lafayette Street around the Saltonstall School, do you have any kind of update on that? Like, are you waiting to get financing from the state, or?
So that's to provide school zone signage with radar feedbacks to replace the old equipment that's currently there. We're waiting to receive the actual equipment from the state. They'll be delivering it to our DPW facility. I already have a quote from one of our vendors for the cost to remove the old and put in. I've had discussions with both John Giardi as well as Mr. Knowlton about any other things that are going on there, but we're hoping to get those, I think they said sometime July over the summer. So ideally, would like to get those in place before the new school year.
Great. I'm kind of speaking, Councilor Varela and I are anxious, now that you've worked out all the wrinkles on North Street, to apply something similar Lafayette Street from, Marblehead to West Ave. And I very much appreciate that we've had a couple of community meetings. Is this back on a timetable where we can maybe have another meeting, or at least the small group of us can meet?
Sure, I'd say I'd like to say all the wrinkles are out of North Street. There's still a lot left to do. As Mr. Giardi alluded to, the smart signal upgrades, there's still striping that needs to be completed. 2 additional crosswalks need to be constructed, thus going back to getting contractors to agree to a timeline and a price. But I'm certainly open to meeting with the residents to talk further about how we move forward.
Maybe Councilor Varela and I can have a meeting with you guys first. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in quickly here. Excuse me. You mentioned the challenge sometimes of finding contractors to execute work, and I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about the evaluation that goes into the decision to transition from temporary improvements to more permanent improvements, and what kind of impact that has on your sort of contracted services line. How are those costs sort of broken out between you and engineering as those improvements get decided on and made? Do you bear a lot of the upfront costs for the temporary things and then it transitions? How does that kind of play out?
Since we started this in 2020, my departments covered, I'd say, the majority of it, with some input from engineering as well as police and DPS, and including fire, when we're looking to make these things permanent. We've been purchasing the temporary materials. There are times where DPW could actually help us install it directly, so we're using staff. But the times we've relied on contractors and just getting quotes and making sure that we're submitting that properly. The way we, again, look at if we're ready to, it's only 3 years now, but we collect data before and then during, and then even after, once we remove the temporary, just to show the change in the speeds that we're seeing, as well as any change to volumes that might occur. But once we see that consistently with the materials in place, we've shown a reduction in targeting speeds about between 20 and 25 miles an hour, as well as consensus from the majority of the abutters that this is what they'd like to see permanently. That's when I've actually come before you all twice now for short-term capital to cover those costs that I didn't necessarily have to do the work, to make sure that I gave myself enough time to get a contractor in place to do the installation. So we've only done one so far on 4 streets. That's worked out. As Councilor Cohen said, we're looking to do it on 2 more this season. I think right now that's the pace I think we can handle, especially with some other staffing changes that are going on in engineering and at DPW. So that's sort of the overall approach that I'm trying to take with the neighborhood traffic calming program.
Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I had one question that I forgot to ask. Regarding the skipper, does your department manages that, correct? Or is the expenses for the skipper, is that contracted services? Is that the line item?
That's been through ARPA, as well as appropriations through the marijuana dispensaries. We had used some initially when we first launched, but again, it's through ARPA dispensaries and the Transportation Enhancement Fund.
So do we have a plan going forward for that?
I've had discussions with Ms. Friedman, and I've started having preliminary discussions with the mayor about how we proceed. We did receive a federal grant through the omnibus bill to expand the overall service with some of our neighboring communities. I'm working on how best we can proceed, making sure that those communities can also contribute to the service. And I'm also rewriting our RFP because we are currently in our third and final year of our current contract.
I realized I said skipper. I said the wrong thing. I meant the Halloween shuttle.
Oh, okay.
I was like, yes, I know all this. I'm like, Halloween shuttle is funded by ARPA? That doesn't make any sense. The Halloween shuttle services, are those managed through your department? And I apologize for making you repeat what you just repeated.
Yeah, we also do the Halloween shuttles. Those funds, the Special Events Revolving Fund. We procure the contractor and we work with the drivers to provide the service, but the funds come from their account.
There's a special events revolving fund. What department does that fall under? Mayor's office.
Mayor's office. I might have supplemented some of it through contracted services. I apologize, don't recall.
Because I was going to say, I noticed your contracted services wasn't exactly what you asked for, and I wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to be cut. And also, just to say that I'm okay with it not being free. I wanted to charge. Thanks.
Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of the committee, through you to Mr. Kucharski. I wanted to really quickly touch on the revenues. Specifically when it comes to the parking lots and the permits you guys allocate, do you guys collect data on who is actually utilizing the permits through the 1 month or 3 month basis?
Sorry, these for permits for the garages?
So let's say Riley Plaza, for example. How do you dictate how many permits you guys can allot to how many spaces are actually being utilized? Is there data on that?
Well, if you may recall, we recently increased it to 10 additional permits. We have about 101 spaces that can be used for parking. We currently issue 115 permits, as well as 38 permits that go to the Norman Street condos. We have found that there's still supply depending on the time of year. So we've been evaluating whether or not we can increase that. As you know, we still have 11 metered parking spaces in there as well. So I think for us, it's just going to continue to monitor it. When people come in, we've only asked for a license plate. And I had some discussions with Ms. Renard about asking for additional information. She said we could have a form, but make it voluntary if they wanted to provide address, if they're a resident or their business, and so on. So I think I'm going to be working with Mr. Soloway to get that put together. I will note that we are now currently sold out through October.
All right. So the reason I want to bring that up is I did have a couple constituents that actually do use a lot on a 6-day basis. And it seems like with a little bit of data, between the hours of 9 and 11, there's been an average of 45 to 50 spots open. And there's an average between 4 and 6 p.m., an average about 50 spots open. So I guess my question is, when it comes to using technology to kind of track this, is there an opportunity or possibility to move to either a programming like Passport or Simply Permit to really gauge on, are these entities that actually have these permits utilizing them? It just seems like a missed opportunity to maximize the potential of the lot and to possibly bring in other revenues, let's say in the evening, to actually have people being able to park there if there's so many spaces open.
I'd have to look into that further to see if that's possible. So thank you.
Councilor Presnowski.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of the committee. David, thank you for attending today. I think your skin is incredibly thick. Seeing that you're probably under the spotlight more than any other department head in this city, and your mild demeanor and the way you answer your questions is admirable. Thank you for your patience with some of these questions too. Not too long ago, myself and Councilor Stott, along with the Chief of Police and Lieutenant Tucker, we attended a meeting at the Jefferson Place about the bypass road. Some of the residents requested a meeting. We thought there was going to be maybe 8 or 10 people at the meeting. Turned out that there was about 50 people at this meeting, and they talked about the dangerousness of the bypass road. We've had at least 2 very serious accidents in the last year, and it was time that we buckle down and try to do something to change it. The residents were talking about how vehicles are almost coming through their front doors, how they hear the screeching and the crashing, and they're usually the first ones out there when there's an accident. And one of the women was talking about, she has nightmares of the things that she's seen because of the people that are ignoring the speed limit signs over there. So there were several suggestions about on things to be able to slow traffic down. One of them was putting up signage that said 35 miles an hour throughout that strip, because it starts at 35 and then it goes to 40, then it goes down to 25. Another suggestion was to make the radar board bigger and brighter, and maybe like Peabody has, you have blue flashing lights when you're going over the speed limit. And another suggestion, and probably I think the best one that was put out, was about the rumble strips. Several other residents said that if they put rumble strips across the incoming lane before the curve, people would know when they're hitting something that they're coming, like they come to a toll booth on the highways, they would know that that's a slowdown. I don't think really that much has been done. I know the police department put a signboard up for a little while about the speed limit, but I don't think anything has been done. Is there anything in the pipeline? I mean, this is a situation where I think time is a necessity before there's any other accident.
This stretch of road is under MassDOT jurisdiction, so it does make it challenging to make some of the changes that you heard and shared with me now. I know that the radar feedback sign that wasn't functioning has since been repaired. That came from Lieutenant Tucker had submitted that request to District 4, and I think they were able to do it within a short period of time, so that's been done. We've had some back and forth conversations with them about speed limits and reducing it, and I will certainly continue to push them. I think it also goes back to the way the road is designed. It's a very wide street, and it makes it conducive to those speeds. So I think we need to have a bigger conversation about how we want this road to look. I think it was intended as a bypass, and sort of people are treating it
It's a straightaway.
Yeah.
I agree. It's a straightaway, and it's a racetrack. But is there anything preventing us from having DPW cut rumble strips? Do we need permission from the state to be able to cut the street? We're not making any changes to the traffic. We're just putting in an audible.
I think at the very least we'd need to get a permit from them, a permission, because it is their layout. But I can double check on that. My understanding is even if we wanted to put a sign up, we technically need to get their permission. So I will speak to DPW as well as to my contacts at the state.
It just seems like, when you put public safety and red tape together, you just, we're not getting things done right, especially when it comes to the safety of people out there. Upcoming changes in some of the striping. I know that, I think it was Councilor Cohen talked about between West Ave and Marblehead, there's some plans. And there's all kinds of rumors out there. So do we know what's on the back burners about other streets that are going to be changed for bike lanes and parking? Is there anything besides that one area?
I don't have anything currently on the horizon. Again, my focus is to get North Street completed, have continued discussions for that section of Lafayette. We have a striping plan that has been shared with the commission and the public, as well as Councilor Varela and Cohen. I think some of the things we're working on now, our focus is our overall safety plan. We did receive a grant from the federal government for Safe Streets for All. So that's something that we want to move forward with, procure a consultant, and work with the other departments on how we put that action plan together. It will include, obviously, bike accommodations, but I don't have anything specifically right now for implementation.
And no implementation date on the Marblehead?
I do not have,
Fine.
no, not
Okay.
not this time.
Okay. There was talk last time about a new parking garage on Church Street. Is that still something that's on a back burner, or is that something that's slowly coming to fruition?
I think we're just looking, we're having a studying done, a parking study that's just an assessment of all of our inventory. But no, it's not looking to, it's looking at with feasibility, we're talking decades.
Who's doing that study?
We hired Stantec. Yeah, the funds were
Okay.
appropriated and we put out an RFP, and we, myself and Tom Daniel have been working with them on that.
Okay. And the last thing, I know that last year when we were talking about, or in one of our meetings, when we were talking about the visitors' passes, there was an idea tossed around about putting the address of where the visitors' pass originated from on the pass itself. And it seemed to be, a good idea that everybody thought was a good idea at that time. But it's just something that hasn't been done, because that way if there's a vehicle parked in front of my house that has a visitor's pass, at least I know where that pass was issued from which neighbor or where it came from, and I know that drew some attention.
I think, I recall Lieutenant Tucker said some police had some issues with doing that for safety reasons. If someone saw the address and they maybe saw someone getting out of the vehicle, they could then follow that. I can follow up on that, but that was something I recall when it was brought up, that it could become a safety issue for someone who they know where this person is going or staying.
I can follow up on that. Take
Sure.
that off your plate.
Sure.
David, you've got enough
you.
there. Thank you. That's all. Thank you very much. Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Councilor Dominguez.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I've been a member of the committee. Thank you, David. And I know you're in a very tough situation. Like you hear from some of my colleagues, your position is very, very demanding. I had a couple of questions, and my first question is in regard to the e-bike program that you say that it's going to be complete soon. Can you elaborate a little bit more? Because I know we had the blue bike. What is the difference between the blue bike and the e-bike?
So we're currently part of the Blue Bike system through a regional procurement project that started in Boston, Cambridge, and Somerville. So we're part of that overall system. So if you're a member of the Blue Bike system, you could ride in Salem or ride bikes in Boston. Recently, the state legislature recognized e-bikes, electronic bikes, and as part of that now, we, and working with Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, are looking to introduce e-bikes into the overall Blue Bike fleet. They've done this in other cities where they operate. Lyft is the overall operator of the system. It's a little slow going, and it's going to be starting in the core Boston, Cambridge, Somerville area. So it's not coming here anytime soon. We are looking at other opportunities where we might be able to introduce e-bikes, working with other vendors or programs, but currently not with the Blue Bikes program.
Yeah, this other question might be answered already. The Blue Bike revenue is also in ARPA. This is going to any other type of account. Blue Bike revenue. There's any revenue?
The expenditures to purchase and operate are through ARPA, and we don't take revenue. It's intended to be a service that is open for the public to utilize as another option to get around the city.
Okay. My other question is in regard to the contract services. I see that it's dropped down $36,000 this year versus last year. If that had to do with the you departments taking care of some of the projects that you mentioned at the beginning, or is because you haven't really increase some of these projects that you envision to have this year?
It's mainly due to the Get Around car share program being sunsetted, and we're no longer needing to hire a fleet manager for that service.
Great. Another question is in regard to the training item that you have here in one of the last page, I believe. You're talking about training and meetings, but this training are for you office only, or all of the employees that you have, because it seems to be very little, $1,500 for training in a city where we see a lot of accidents in traffic. I think that seems to be a little bit too low. I would like to see more training coming if we wanted to increase, especially the good quality of services that we have to provide in traffic throughout the whole city. So is that because they are well trained, or you think that the department do not need any more training?
Some of the training that we get is covered through a Bay State program, so there's no cost to it. And with COVID, a lot of the stuff is online, so we don't necessarily have to travel to conventions or things like that. We have been finding we haven't been going to conventions. We've been busy, and so we haven't necessarily gone. But again, a lot of the training we can get online through state programs that are either no cost or low cost, and I have staff who will sit at their desk and be able to sit in on a webinar and get the training they need.
Yes, my last question is on the first page, when you say general government, improve communication and transparency with citizens, including social media and online tools, software and more. My question is on see how divided sometimes is the city residents in some of the projects that you lately have put it on. And it is not a secret that North Street has been a lot of discussion citywide, and it was also an item for the last elections, and many people spoke in favor and against. And when you say you're going to improve that communication, what else are you going to do besides social media and software and online tools? You mentioned more, but I just want to hear from you, what else are you putting in place to make sure that the communication is in there?
So we've been taking advantage of the public input site that the city's purchased, where we've created web pages dedicated to North Street, but also to the traffic calming program, to provide all of the presentations that we've given on a particular project. It allows for input from the public, where they could provide their feedback. We did this regularly for the traffic calming programs that we're doing. When we have projects that we're just proposing, we do code reds, we send out flyers, mailers, we try to work with the ward councilor to get the word out as much as we can so that people are aware of the project. We also solicit direct feedback from abutters to hear from them. We've done surveys as well, so we're trying all these things. Sometimes they don't always work. The North Street project, we worked on that over 2 years. It wasn't something that we just decided to do one day. There was a lot of input. We could always do more, and I'm always looking to do that and having more discussions with people. So that's sort of what my focus will be moving forward.
Great. Is there any way you can explain? This is my last question. It's kind of, similar to what Chairman McLean's made. Can you go over the process of making the final decision when you do all of those steps that you did, especially in North Street? What is the process at the end? How do you make the final decision, and how people really see that the decision was made based on the majority of the people who want that project to move forward?
So again, with the traffic calming projects, we try to be as objective as possible and look at data. So we've established a prioritization tool to help us identify streets where we may want to implement traffic calming measures. Doesn't mean necessarily we would, but it's sort of that first step. Then we go out and we collect speed and volume data. We work with the police department to really get a sense. Is it perception of what people are saying they're seeing, or is it reality? And we typically try to get a week's worth of data, so we try to get as a robust set as we can. If we're seeing that what people are saying and the data is in line with each other, then we start looking at it more earnest, contact the ward counselor, have discussions, meet on site if needed, and then have a meeting with the commission where we discuss. We do sort of like I call it a street diagnostic, where we give on-street regulations, we say what data we've collected, and then we present what we think, working with a consultant, a design. And then what we've been doing is then we put that out on public input for feedback. So we have a design that's a draft, and we get the feedback from the public. In certain cases, we'll tweak it. If we're hearing overwhelmingly that there's support, we'll move forward with implementation. If we're finding that there's a lot of pushback, and I know I've had discussions with some of you about that, we'll either do additional survey work before we implement something to make some additional tweaks to the design. So each one is different. It's intended to be iterative. We might try something and not work out and tweak it in the following year, but we try to gather as much input and rely on data as much as possible when we're making these decisions.
Thank you.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Just a comment. I want to thank you for all the efforts you just went over. I remember the interactive, we've had several of them, the interactive websites for comments. You can see what other comments are. You can see timelines of the projects and everything you just discussed. And I want to say they've been impressive, and thank you.
Councilor Hepworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just because the topic came up around Church Street, and this, you don't have to answer this, and this is not your jurisdiction necessarily, but I will advocate that we should fit as much affordable housing as we can on that lot. We don't need another parking garage where you'd be able to look across the street and see a parking garage, and then look across the street and see another parking garage, but that's just me on my soapbox. Regarding parking revenue, have we looked at, and other cities have done dynamic parking. I think Boston piloted something that was just where neighborhoods below 80% occupancy saw a reduction in parking rates, and neighborhoods above 80% occupancy saw an increase in the rates. And then San Francisco, I think, has done it throughout maybe larger parts of the city, but it seems like it's something that we could do that would increase availability of parking, potentially bring in more revenue from tourists, and then also potentially also increase revenue. Is it something that you have looked at? And then I guess beyond technology, what else would you need to make something like that happen?
I haven't looked at it in enough detail, but certainly having a technology in place would assist with that effort. I think all of our on-street and some of our lots are still the old mechanical meters. We obviously have the pay-by-phone app, but I think we'd have to take a serious look at, if we're looking to do that, how are we communicating that out effectively and not confusing residents, visitors with any changes that we might be making. We rely heavily on signage right now. If we're going to go more to a digital-based information, there's going to be some way that we need to communicate that.
Are the rates, I should know this, but are the rates set by ordinance? Is there would there need to be an ordinance change to allow for something like that to happen?
So right now, I think in the ordinance, there's a cap on how much you can charge per hour. And I believe it's $1.75. But when we do things sort of in October, and I know I've submitted something recently to change rates as a temporary condition, it's been as an order.
Okay. So I think it's something we should for sure look at. It's something where 20% of the spots should always be open. And if that means increasing rates or decreasing rates, it's typically a win-win for a lot of communities. I hope it's something that we do look at in the future. The other one was, I guess, building a little bit off of Councilor Dominguez's question around goals and communication. I think your department has done a great job around having having information available. And there seems to be, just from my perspective, information in a lot of different places. Have you looked at ways to bring, because there is so much data out there, when counselors have reached out to you about questions around things like North Street or other places, you've had crash data that you can point us to. There's interactive maps that are available. Even for neighborhood traffic calming, you can go on and see which streets meet the qualifications that we've set for that. I would love to see something set up where it was easily navigable for any resident to go on, because I think a lot of these questions, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that rules the day sometimes on this, that somebody thinks that the traffic has gotten worse, or that it seems that there's more accidents happening in this location. And when you look at the data, that doesn't always bear that out. So I think that it's something where I would love to see us invest more in building a resident-facing site that was very easy for folks to look at. Here's what a neighborhood traffic calming program looks like. Here's if my street meets the qualifications, it doesn't. Recent projects, here's the data that we've seen around crash data. Is this something that you've sort of been working on over the years to bring this information into one place, or is there still, I guess, work to be done there?
Well, the prioritization tool that Mr. Finley has developed, we have on our webpage, where you can look at every single piece of data that the police department has collected for us. We will put up there and show on a dashboard, so you could zoom in and out on the entire city. And as you zoom in, it repopulates the information, so you could see the percentage of vehicles 85% over what the speed limit was, the volumes. So we've tried to create this environment where someone could just explore and toggle around to see, okay, where's my street? And they could get that information, at least that we've collected. We've also created the prioritization tool where we're ranking all of the information, and we provide a narrative as to what are we looking at. We're looking at land use, we're looking at walkability and all these things, and how we're weighting those. It sounds like you were seeking something that marries those two components, so we haven't gotten there yet. GIS is a very powerful tool that Mr. Finley understands a lot better than I do, and I could certainly discuss, how can we maybe better link at least the scoring that we've done when you're all sort of in one page and have everything there. I don't want to overload people, but that's something that we could explore.
Yeah, I think that's my feedback on it, is that I've noticed that there's a lot of data. Sometimes it's difficult to use, sometimes it's difficult to navigate through it. So I think that the more you had there, the better. And is it fair to say that we're moving away from traffic calming applications and towards of a more formulaic sort of this is how a street qualifies, or are we going to continue to work through both of those?
I found that since we revamped the tool, we have received less applications. So what we're trying to do now is look at the scoring. We're still receiving them if they come in, and we certainly factor that into the overall assessment. But it's really right now it's been okay. Staff's looking at it and then bringing it to the ward counselor for discussion, and then going through that process I outlined earlier.
Okay, and then I guess the last question, just for any because residents get around in the streets in a lot of different ways. Is there, beyond, I guess, see-click-fix, and this may be the answer is just see-click-fix, but is there a way for residents to report places that are not accessible to them? When I think about like riding a bike, there's breaks in the chain throughout the entire city. We've done a great job of connecting different bike lanes and giving different ways to get around, but an example would be, you can get pretty safely down parts of Congress Street, and when you hit the Congress Street Bridge, there's no bike lane anymore, and you have to ride in traffic with kids potentially, at least in my case. And it's just a little break in the chain, but it makes the entire ride to school much less safe for my kids. Is there a place, and even pedestrians, there are spots where, for instance, along I think it's Satella, where the sidewalk just ends, and you're either in the road or you get across the street, and there may not be a crosswalk right there. Are there places for residents to report those sort of things, or should that just continue to go through see-click-fix?
I would say see-click-fix is more intended for if a sign is down or if a meter's not working. If it's more of a longer-term approach that we're looking to connect bike accommodations and there's a gap, my website, my email is on the webpage. You can email myself or Ms. Hodge, the assistant director, And that's a better way for us to sort of target it and add it. Maybe we are working on something that we haven't necessarily gone out publicly yet. It's something that we've been looking at. It's something that could be on our complete streets prioritization plan. And if there's enough movement, if it's tied to a development, we could start looking at that more in earnest and have that as another data point where we've been hearing from the public asking for this type of connection or this type of accommodation. So,
Thank you.
Councilor Hepworth,
There's no other questions. I'd like to make a motion.
please do.
I'd like to move to approve the personnel budget in the amount of $1,165,504. The expenditures budget in the amount of $445,35 for a grand total of $1,610,539.
Councilor Hepworth moves to recommend approval of the Traffic and Parking Department personnel budget in the amount of $1,165,504, expenditures in the amount of $445,035 for a total of $1,610,539. Seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor? 3 plus my own. That carries. Is there anything that you wanted to highlight for us in the capital improvement plan while you're here to talk to us about it?
I already mentioned the resident permit parking request. That's for the platform as well as the LPR system, license plate recognition. Also note asking for funds to continue the Fort Ave, Columbus Ave redesign of that large intersection, which would continue making a permanent installation of a multi-use bidirectional path, connecting the Willows neighborhood with the rest of the city and part of our sort of off-street bike and ped network. Asking for additional funds for the South Harbor Garage to continue that work. As you know, we put in public restrooms, we replaced the stairwells, we did some outside facade improvements, and we worked to get Destination Salem in the site to open a visitor center. So we're looking to keep that momentum going, deal with some exhaust issues that needs to be removed that are now defunct, as well as drainage and some punch throughs in the deck of the structure. I'd say those are sort of the overall things, and then ongoing annual requests to continue the bike, continue the ped work that we've been in the traffic calming that we've been working on.
Very good. Everybody's had a chance to ask their questions relative to those projects. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. How's everybody doing? Do we need a 2-minute bio break? People need to stretch and whatnot. Are we good to go? Let's get it going. All right. Why don't we go back to the regular order and deal with public property? This is probably not going to be to everybody's satisfaction. I think everybody in the room knows already that our inspectional services director.
Mr. Chair, if I could, since we're going to have to deal with public property and we're going to be here till the end, can we do health and sustainability first and do public property at the end? Because with Mr. St. Pierre no longer being with us, so.
Okay, but the sleepier we get, the grumpier we're going to get. It's up to you.
That's fine.
That's fine with me. I don't see anybody who seems to have an issue with that. We'll move to health.
Only because he kicked me in the elevator. I wanted to make sure I got out of here early.
I thought I was going to get to go first.
That's not a very healthy thing to do.
Good evening, everyone. David Greenbaum, Health Agent for the Board of Health. Most of you probably know me through all the COVID response and so on. However, the Health Department does do a lot more than just COVID at this point. We have pivoted back to a lot of our routine work, inspections, nuisance complaints, and the like. I'm happy to answer any questions specific to the budget.
Can you give us an update about COVID anyway?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily that it's over. I'll say that it has waned to a point where it's not an area of concern anymore. We're monitoring wastewater data and hospitalizations as the two primary benchmarks. Wastewater data is way down, which really is the primary benchmark for me personally. Test counts really aren't valid at this point since there's no actual valid testing other than doctor's offices and things like that. Home tests are so prevalent that, if somebody tests positive, nobody's ever going to know. There's no reporting system for it. So, while it's still on our radar and we're still watching trends, it's not an area of concern at this point.
Is the city still providing health kits to the public if they need them?
We do still have test kits available for the time being. Public is more than welcome to come and get them from us, 5 kits per person per household. So once those are gone, then we'll talk with the mayor and decide if we want to purchase additional kits for distribution or not.
Very good. I'm going to continue to ask you a few high-level questions.
Yep.
Something I think probably we're all hearing a lot about in the city right now, coyotes. Give us a high-level update on sort of what the city's action is relative to that.
So I think most of the coyote activity, responses through the animal control officer. We get complaints about areas of concern, dumpsters being open, trash out, attracting coyotes, and we address those on an individual basis. But I think anything around the wildlife aspect of it is better asked to the animal control officer.
Fair enough. Let's keep talking about trash.
Sure.
Specifically relative to not only trash as a nuisance as itself, but the way it attracts rodents or does not attract rodents. You've heard some conversation about that in these chambers before already. I know that there was some conversation around trying to bolster communication with the residents of the city in terms of handling their trash, properly storing it. Anything you want to share with us about that?
So we encourage people to always use rodent-proof, weather-tight trash receptacles that are covered all the time. They should be closed when not in use. We are embarking on a program to start enforcement of the required screening ordinance for dumpsters. We've addressed a number of them with different places throughout the city already. And as we come across them, either during routine inspection or via complaint, we're addressing those dumpsters as well. We are working in conjunction with the trash and recycling coordinator to make sure that people are putting their trash out appropriately. No loose trash out, bags out before 6 a.m. the morning of, and trash barrels and containers out at not before 6 p.m. the night before.
And my last sort of top level question, if you can, and I know some of these questions I know require collaboration with other departments, or other departments are kind of the spearhead, but any information that you can share with us relative to managing sort of the unhoused population, the opioid epidemic that our city is not immune to, those sort of bleeding edge public health moments.
Yep. So as far as the unhoused population goes, we do work in conjunction with the police department, LifeBridge, to try and get people into housing if they want it. As we all know, unhoused residents have the right to be out unhoused if they would like to be. So we try to meet them where they're at and try and get them services as best we can in conjunction with those other agencies. The opioid epidemic, as you all are probably aware, we do participate in all the settlement fund monies that are coming in, and we are in active talks with all of our partners to discuss how best to expend those funds. I know the police department has a few requests around staffing. I'm looking at purchasing some naloxone boxes to put around the city where we see a high level of opioid activity and overdoses, so that people can access Narcan at a very low threshold. So those are a couple of the things that we're looking at to do with those funds.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of the committee. Really appreciate your responsiveness and ability to work out in the field, you and your staff. For some reason, you seem to be a neighborhood therapist sometimes. I just got a couple of things. In your synopsis, it mentions shared $300,000 grant. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So in 2022, the Department of Public Health put out an RFP for what they call the Public Health Excellence Grant. At that time, it was $300,000 for 3 years. What that grant did was give us funds to work collaboratively and regionally with our partners. So we had an ongoing relationship with 7 other communities on the North Shore, and we all applied for this grant and got it. What we're able to get out of that grant is additional human resources. We can hire staff. We can't use those resources to supplant any of the existing public health infrastructure in any of those communities. It's a violation of the grant. We have hired a coordinator, an epidemiologist, a part-time nurse, and we had a full-time regional inspector who recently left to join the Beverly Health Department permanently. So we are looking to replace that position. In addition to that, we were granted a field training hub for these public health excellence grants, which is closer to $500,000 a year. I should mention that when I wrote this, the grant had not been issued for the coming FY24, but our funding for that PHE grant is also going up to around $500,000. So we will be hiring field trainers to do training in the PHE grant areas from Amesbury to Melrose and everywhere in between.
Great, thank you. You mentioned also expanding the COF Certificate of Fitness program.
Yes.
Expanding landlord outreach, and looking forward for you to get some of the ARPA money through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board allocation. There will be, I believe, a seminar. This will come up in the sustainability meeting too, that Lori Stewart is working on, and I'm assuming that you'll be part of that.
She has asked us to participate in that and do a presentation at that as well, yes.
Great. You mentioned reviving the Elder Assistance Coordinating Team. Could you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so many years ago, we created a elder response team. We called it for short REACT, which really doesn't hit what it is, but it's a collaboration between health, police, fire, Council on Aging, and AgeSpan, the Elder Services affiliate for the North Shore. And we meet monthly to identify elders that may be at risk, that may need resources, and we brainstorm best how to provide them those resources and get them the services that they need.
Great. My last one goes along with what Councilor McLean asked you about opiate substance. Fortunately, less people are ODing, but because of the severity of the substance, more people are dying, unfortunately. And the CIU unit, Healthy Streets, and some other people, myself included, were reviving the March and Vigil, which will be August 31st. I don't know if they've contacted you yet, but it would be great if you and your staff could be part of that.
We'd be happy to be part of that. I did hear that it was being revived, but we haven't had direct outreach on that yet.
I'll
consider this direct outreach.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. Okay.
Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Not being a member of the committee, through you to Mr. Greenbaum, thank you for what you do. I just wanted to really touch on the Johnson & Johnson allocation of money that you just discussed. Concerning not only the naloxone kits, is there possibly an opportunity to also talk about possibly allowing fentanyl strips to also be accessible by residents? Because I know New York State has done this with their sheriff's department, and it's been highly successful in, allowing people to really test what their substance is, if you will.
So we participate in something through the state called the Community Naloxone Purchasing Program, and the state also provides us with fentanyl test strips. We have them at the health department. People can come in and get them anytime. They're free, and we have a fair amount of them that we can hand out.
All right. With that, I think what would really bring this over the top and let our residents know that are interested in that is to have, team up with the police department of actually having a public event, establishing that, we're here to help, and like if people need access to this so they actually know. I know it's been successful, and I look forward to you guys really spending that money in a beneficial way. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we will do everything we can to outreach to the community regarding that.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean, and thank you for the important work that you do. Just a quick question. I noticed the increase in the certificate of fitness inspections for short-term rentals and the expected increase in the numbers, which I'm glad to see, and I'm glad to see those get done. I was just wondering, with that increase, is that manageable for the staff that you have? I see that's a lot of extra. A lot of extra inspections are expected. I was just wondering if you could speak to that and how that unfolds. Thank you.
So it will be a heavy lift. I've assigned an inspector to that specifically. We know that we have registered and inspected, or registered anyway, around 115 short-term rentals. We know that there's probably over 200 to 250 that the Department of Revenue knows about. So 140, 135 that have not been registered to date. So we are trying to identify them, outreach to them. I did hold a meeting with some of the short-term rental operators in town and explain to them the way that I hope that they'll outreach to us if they know of somebody that is running one that isn't registered. I had an operator reach out to me earlier this week, or last week I should say, and we've reached out through a notification to that operator telling them that they need to register. I think in that instance, we're going to find out is that they don't live there, so they're not going to be able to do this going forward.
Yes, I understand that the state, now that they're collecting more taxes, has more data on these. Do you find that have they been forthcoming, and has it been helpful to address the ones that aren't living there and are supposed to be, or there's too many in one location?
So we have an outreach to the state directly, but there have been other agencies in the city that have, in particular, Mayor Driscoll's administration did that regularly, and they have been responsive.
Okay. Seeing nothing further, I will accept a motion. Councilor Hepworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the health personnel budget line item in the amount of $598,475 of the health expenditures in the amount of $123,139 for a grand total of $721,614.
Councilor Hepworth moves to recommend approval of the health personnel budget in the amount of $598,475, expenditures at $123,139 for a total of $721,614, seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor? 3 plus my own, that carries. David, was there anything you wanted to highlight for us in terms of capital projects moving forward? It's okay if it's no.
I think the only thing in there is a new department vehicle. Former Mayor McCarthy was gracious enough to reassign one of those get-around cars to my department. I would advocate for that additional vehicle when inspectors need transportation for a car that's in the shop, or if they're going somewhere doing beach testing or something, having that additional vehicle is helpful. So I would just advocate that car be given serious consideration by the council.
Thank you.
Just for everyone's clarification.
Use the mic.
Oh, sorry. Just for everyone's clarification on that, this is going to be, currently there's one car, it's a Chevy Volt, is that it? Lease on Leaf, there you go. It's plugged in behind the City Hall Annex. We're going to add 2 more cars to that platform, and those cars are going to be in the garage. So if an inspector is going to go out on inspections, they park the car in the garage. They can sign up, however it works through that app program that they have over at the Annex, to be able to take those, because the assessor's office at the same time, when they go into certain areas, they want a car available to them, because they've been going into residential parking areas and been getting tickets. And we have a program implemented prior to my administration, my brief administration, that they don't pay for parking tickets. So our inspectors were going out inspecting, assessing properties, getting parking tickets, and then having to pay for them. So if they're driving around a city vehicle, that has a big emblem on the sign, it's a little more, we would hope that they wouldn't get a ticket. So they'd ask for that, so we're making cars. There'll be 3 now, right now currently we have 1 car available, there'll be 3 cars available for the various departments, so.
My inspectors have experienced that in neighborhoods as well, parking tickets, trying to just go out and do their job. So,
Can we just give you guys some parking passes?
we
Seems like
do
low-hanging
have the
fruit.
placards so they can park in behind the annex in those city hall spots, but those don't always work when you're out in the neighborhoods.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the one last thing I just want to add, this picture always has to stay in here. Joe Keefe and his wife getting their immunization shots.
Okay.
Remember that.
As long as I'm here.
Okay, good. Thank you, dude.
Thank you.
Okay. Sustainability and resiliency. Welcome to the table.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Thanks. I don't need to pretend that I don't know you because I don't know many of you I've not met. So I'm Neil Duffy. I am the Director of Sustainability and Resiliency, heading into my 4th month on the job here in the city of Salem, and happy to be here. Since I haven't met you, I just previously I worked for the Department of Energy Resources at the Green Communities Division for the last 6 years. I was the Northeast Regional Coordinator there, working as a liaison to cities, including Salem, cities in town in the Northeast region, on clean energy projects and grants. The Sustainability and Resiliency Department oversees and coordinates and manages sustainability and resiliency projects within the city. We certainly don't manage all of them. As you heard tonight, there are a lot of projects that are related to sustainability, but we certainly try to coordinate and support everything that we can. We also engage and work with residents on and businesses on initiatives to help meet our goals related to the Resilient Together Climate Action Plan. And we administer that climate action plan as well. In addition to that, we also do policy work and, in the future, hopefully be working with many of you on policies related to, outward into the community, and then also internally, policy like purchasing policies, for instance, for the city. In terms of the budget, I don't have a lot to say. It's the framework was established by my predecessors. There's not a lot that has changed. I think the only real shift in funds in terms of personnel is that the sustainability project manager position, there's been an increase in that salary, and we've shifted funds for the outreach and engagement coordinator and paid for part of that position with grant funds from National Grid. So there is not a reduction in that outreach and engagement coordinator position. It's just part of that salary is now being paid for with a grant, and that was to pay for that increase for the sustainability and resiliency manager. I'm happy to take questions.
Councilor Cohen, what a surprise.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Duffy. Really important that we get the positions filled. I know you're working at that. People don't necessarily know, what Vanessa Pineda did, having an energy manager who manages the price of power choice. I just have a couple of things. It looks like Lori Stewart, now the health department, and hopefully your department will have a landlord forum, which I think is really important. We really, unfortunately, we're not getting to where we need to be, as you and I have talked about, when we only make, single-family homes sustainable with heat pumps and solar. We're a community with, a high percentage of multifamilies. And, I think we need to, just giving you my opinion, we need to expand the outreach for multifamily rentals and condos, because condos can take advantage. Also, one really important thing, because we have so many multifamilies in lower income, environmental justice neighborhoods, we've talked even at this council about the $10,000 rebate to convert a home to heat pumps. But for low income residences, it can be as much as $16,000. So it could actually make the conversion free in most cases. And I just have one last thing, which I know is not necessarily just your department, but maybe in conjunction with traffic and parking, park and rec, whoever. I'm really adverse personally to the city paying for EV charging stations. I feel like a lot of people who come into the city use them. It's way less expensive than a combustion, gas car, for example. If you correlate, $4 a gallon versus, 60 cents, about the same amount. And I think going forward, whether we get public stations or, stations through the National Grid program or whatever it may be, I'm just encouraging the city to make them credit card. I don't believe that it's the city's burden to be paying for people to come in and charge their cars in Salem. And I'm not going to actually ask you any other questions, because I know you and I meet fairly often, and I appreciate that. And I do think there's a lot of things that we can do from a policy standpoint to get us where we need to be, especially on the sustainability side. So I just want to kind of welcome you to the city.
Thank you.
Does the council have office hours?
Yeah, just on those comments, Stacy Kilbin in our office, and I met with Laurie Stewart on that landlord meeting. I think we were one of the first meetings that she had, and she was doing a lot of planning, so it'd be a good time to check in with her on that. I think that's a great opportunity to enhance the outreach that we're already trying to do. As you mentioned, it's really hard. It's sort of the holy grail of electrification and efficiency. So any way we can contact those people is great. And I think that once we do get our feet under us and fully staffed, I think thinking more holistically about charging stations and how we approach that in the city is a really good idea. One of the first conversations I had with then acting mayor McCarthy was about such approaches. So totally agree with that. Thanks.
Councilor Dominguez.
Thank you, Chair McLean, and welcome to the city of Salem. I see that your budget is very, very, very small budget, and I'm very curious about the position that are vacant. Are those salaries are competent with other cities in town? Because I see $28,000 for a sustainability engagement coordinator.
Yeah, so the engagement and outreach coordinator as well as the energy manager are both funded half through the city and then half through in terms of the outreach and engagement coordinator. As I mentioned, it's funded half through a National Grid grant, at least for the next 3 years, and then the energy manager has always been paid funded half through the revolving fund that we have. So it's not part of the general budget. So the salaries are twice what's listed there.
Good. And my other question is real quick. I know you say you have 4 months in the job. That's what you did?
Yeah, just starting my fourth month. Yeah.
You started, so I'm pretty sure that you're gonna come next time with more information so we can dig it in a little bit more.
Dig in, sure.
Yeah. So you coming from other cities working?
I came from the state. I worked for
Department
of Energy Resources.
You used to see a full capacity on employees. So how many employees do you think you're going to need? Moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think that actually, so even though I worked for the state, I worked with a lot of cities and towns in their sustainability departments. And I would say for a city the size of Salem, Salem actually has a pretty significant department. Beverly, for instance, our partner in the climate action plan, they have a director and they have a project manager position that they just created. So in a lot of larger towns and cities, a lot of these departments are really departments of one and growing. I would say I'm still trying to assess our department and where it makes sense for needs and what we need to do. I would say additionally to that we, just by nature, we coordinate a lot with other departments. I'm under the planning department technically, and so we work with the planning department on a lot of projects. We work with parking and transportation a lot. Salem, as you know, has a really robust planning department. Although they're not in our department, there are a lot of positions that can fall under that sustainability umbrella. For instance, like the solid waste coordinator, Janelle Roque, who's fantastic, and we work with her a lot as well.
Yeah, in your own opinion, how do you see us as a city compared to other cities based on your own experience? You work for the state.
Yeah, I would say, keeping up. Yeah, keeping up, is challenging for all municipalities.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, Chair. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I have a question about Salem Power Choice. So if I recall correctly, the National Grid electricity prices went way up over the winter, and we were very happy because the Power Choice prices did not go up. And I actually included that in some information to constituents and told them where to look on their bill to see if they were in Power Choice. And several of them got back to me and said that they were not, and they don't know how that happened, which, whatever. I think it would really be a good time right now to advertise that again. 69% of the population is great, but it's not good. I just think we could do better. I think if people understood more about what Power Choice is providing for residents, and also there's, the salespeople that went around and got people to switch. And I heard one very small business owner was told that the city was doing this. And, of course we said, absolutely not. The city would not have you change away from Power Choice. So I think we need to get more information out there for that 31% that are not on Power Choice. But I do have a question. If they switch over right now, are they still getting a competitive price?
Yeah, to my knowledge, I think that the vendors that we work with still honor that. There are typically in our contract, and then also in typically in aggregation contracts, there is an ability for them to, if they're accepting it, someone who's opting in, who opted out, to only offer something that's closer to what the basic service rate is. To prevent, the obvious of people sort of jumping in and out. Mm-hmm. So I think that was certainly, I don't know what the conversations were like here in Salem, but I think that was a concern because there was a natural, people were looking for ways to control their costs over the winter. But if you have a flood of folks trying to come in that kind of a competitive market, it can be challenging for these suppliers to meet their obligations. So I think you're right. Now is a pretty good time to advertise because the rates have gone down. So it's a little bit calmer time. Mm-hmm. And I also agree that it's something that really needs constant gardening. There's a lot of misinformation. And so, yeah, we certainly acknowledge that and we'll continue to do our best.
Okay, thank you.
Nice to meet you. Can you talk a little bit about your contracted services line? It's not a huge item, but I noticed that it doubled. I'm just curious what's driving that.
Yeah, part of it is, most of it is the Climate OS dashboard to track our progress in the action plan, which have been developing over the last year, and hopefully we'll be able to go live sometime soon. As Councillor Cohen mentioned, with our energy manager leaving, that's something that I've been picking up and trying to get moving. So a lot of it is that. The other piece of it is really anticipating the need. If you see in the dues, there's power options. So there are certain services that companies like Power Options provide in terms of net zero planning, which are really like sort of concierge services, technical assistance for what I would say, relatively speaking, short money. And there's an anticipation that we may need some sort of technical assistance like that over the next year as we continue to develop our net zero plan and strategies and looking at our buildings in coordination with our performance contract that we're doing with Amoresco.
Okay. Seeing nothing further, I'm looking for a motion. Councillor Apworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the sustainability personnel line item in the amount of $251,623 and the sustainability expenditures line item in the amount of $20,700 for a grand total of $272,323.
Councillor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the sustainability personnel budget in the amount of $251,623, expenditures in the amount of $20,700 for a total of $272,323, seconded by Councillor Stott. All those in favor? 3 plus my own, that carries. Is there anything that you wanted to highlight coming forward in terms of capital projects?
This is yeah. The only thing listed there is there's, I think it's like $68,000 for EV charging stations, which are part of our Green Communities grant. It's coming out of the revolving fund. And that's really gap funding between the total project cost for 6 dual head level 2 EV charging stations in the city. So the difference between the total project cost, the Green Communities grant, the National Grid incentives, that's meant to fund that. So that number may move up and down a little bit as we install those stations and get confirmation on the incentives.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Tom. Put yourself in the hot seat?
All right. We've knocked down most of the ducks. So we will return to public property. As I started to say earlier, I think everybody already knows our inspectional services director recently left. Our acting director was not able to join us tonight, unfortunately, and we are a little squeezed for time in terms of getting through all of these prior to our Thursday meeting. However, we are joined by our finance director, as we are every night, and our recent acting mayor and Ward 1 councilor, who was closely involved in setting up all of this budget. So we will put you both in the hot seat, direct our questions your way, and any questions that can't be answered directly, I'm told, will be forwarded so that we can get that information back later on.
Thank you, Chair McLean. So as you noted, Mayor Pangallo recently named Vula Orfanos as the acting building commissioner. I'll pass along any questions that I can't answer tonight to her, and she will follow up with you to make sure your questions are answered. Just to do a quick overview for folks that aren't familiar with the department, The department's responsible for receiving, reviewing, and issuing all building, plumbing, and gas permits. Most of these permits require at least one inspection. The department also handles large amounts of complaints and inquiries regarding housing, zoning, and city ordinance compliance. The department, in addition to its general administrative budget, also has a fixed cost center, and separately also manages the budget for the Board of Appeals. In the general administration budget, as noted, there will be a new building commissioner in FY24, as well as a new facilities director. Additionally, you'll note in the personnel requests, there's a custodian that is currently based at the CLC. That is, the budget for that custodian is located in the building department's budget. For FY24, there's a recommendation to move that employees' salary costs 50% to Parks and Rec and 50% to the Council on Aging, just to better reflect that they are 100% located at the CLC. It'll be easier for all the departments involved to manage. That was a joint recommendation through all the involved departments. Other changes in the personnel department are related to cost of living adjustments, and there's an increase for the part-time employee who hadn't had an increase in several years. There is one request that was not afforded that the previous building commissioner wanted to bring up that sort of was taken under advisement, which was for a new local building code and compliance inspector for city ordinance. Sort of civil infraction related enforcement, so like snow shoveling. These are like Chapter 40U type issues, which I can't speak about in great detail. But it was something that was recommended by the previous building inspector. We didn't have substantial conversation about it since it was just, unfortunately, the cost wasn't able to be accommodated. But it is something that he went on record thinking would be helpful for the city to have a conversation about. He also thought that should the city pursue such a position, it might also be helpful if that person is a sanitarian and building inspector, because they could perform multiple roles potentially. So something that we can mention with the new mayor for his consideration potentially in the future. On the expenses side, just small adjustments to office supplies and custodial supplies. The department needs new code books. And then just on the fixed cost side, some increases related to electricity and postage, but standard increases. And I can stop there. I'm happy to also talk about capital and the Board of Appeals, but I think those are the main changes to the department's budget.
I think I will encourage you in this case to get into the capital right away so that we can just discuss everything.
Perfect. So I think the main point of interest potentially on the capital side is there is a $30,000 request for City Hall camera and key card access. This is a little either a down payment, but it may actually be sufficient because we have identified some existing funds that will help toward this project. But there is a larger project underway that includes installing cameras at City Hall and changing access to the building rather than keys to be based on lanyards and badges, in addition to some other sort of safety improvements around City Hall. And so this $30,000 would assist with some funding. We've also identified we had a grant through Maya that paid for some other pieces of this project. And we have some unspent capital funds from this year that we believe can be put towards the purchase of the cameras and also updating the access to the building, City Hall, and also access to the annex building as well. In addition to that, there are the annual maintenance accounts for ADA improvements and small building repairs that have been appropriated the past couple of years. And then I can also just mention on the Board of Appeals, which is a separate budget, but that is also that's level funded for next year. It has been level funded for many years.
If I may, the difficult part was, I'm sorry.
The mic you did.
No, I turned it off. No. The other difficult thing that happened early on this year was Mike Litakowski leaving as well. He was there was talk that Mike would kind of spin off into his own department with regards to building and grounds for the city side. On the school side, they have their own building and grounds person. With Mike leaving, it left a lot of things up in the air that we had to kind of sift through a month or so, and then, of course, Tom leaving, saying he was going to leave, he put us even in a more awkward position. So there are a couple things that There are going to be we're going to try to take care of under some monies that were left in Michael's budget. Michael's position is going to, the timing worked out that we moved Michael's position back under the building department because that's where it was. And Mayor Driscoll thought that she was going to spin him out of there with the janitors. But with all the transition going on, we felt, at least for now, to leave him where he was. So that position is going to stay in the building department. There were some monies in there. There are a lot of needs in this building, the building we sit in. We identified a lot of them. Some of those there were some monies left in Michael's capital lines. We're going to take care of a couple things. First and foremost, the fire alarm system. It should be, I haven't been around for a week. It's supposed to be happening pretty soon. The fire alarm system in this building needs to be addressed. But around the Myers, our insurer, part of it was identifying city employees, much like in the school department. Everyone's going to have a lanyard with a picture on it. The lanyard is now also going to have a chip in it. So if you're coming in, we can set up the doorways. So if you want to come in like an hour before work, you can have a chip that will say you can come in at 7. It will open the door. The doors themselves will open at like 7 or 7:30 to allow public access. But then if you also are at a late night meeting and you run to your car and you forget something you need to get back in, your lanyard will then let you back in the building. So it's just a matter of increasing safety, and we're also, for the safety of the employees, we also expanded on what Meyer was asking us to do and looked at security cameras as well. This building is unmonitored right now. We're looking to add 2 cameras on the first floor, 1 at each doorway entrance, and 2 on the second floor, 1 outside in the hallway outside the mayor's office, and 1 out back by the ante room that would then be focused down the hallway to pick up legal and purchasing, but at the same time also pick up the stairwell going up to the 3rd floor up to finance. Hopefully some of those things will get done under some monies we found in this year's budget, but there are going to be the capital expenses for those moving forward because they are in big time need. That was one of the things when we talked to City Hall employees, is the ability to feel safe in the building while serving the public. So those look to be addressed. The individual's named Jared. Jared's position, he's technically falls under the janitors that are assigned to the building department. But Jared if everyone's met Jared, he's a great young man. He works down the CLC and he's down there all the time. He doesn't come uptown per se. When he's on vacation, someone from here will go down and cover for him. But so if just as a personnel perspective and to make it reflective in the budget, the decision was to move him down there. So you'll see that change. I think Vula's ready to step up and do an interim and take over the department short term. I mean, obviously, they're in need of finding another building inspector as well as a property management person to manage all our properties on the city side of thing. It's unfortunate. I mean, Tom decided it was time for him to leave, and so I wish him all the best. He will losing a wealth of knowledge, but I think that someone will rise up and we'll go forward. But the budget is reflective of most everything that we were able to get Tom in and talk about his budget before he made his decision to leave. So I think the budget has enough in it to sustain itself. Obviously, there may be some tweaks personnel-wise when it comes to filling those positions, whether or not the monies may have to be tweaked. But one of the other funny thing is the postage machine. I always find it funny that postage is in buildings. But for some reason or other, when I was acting mayor, I always got the Pitney Bowes alerts that were alerting me that the postage was going up, and I just kept sending them to Tom, and he's like, "Thank you." So, but we did get a new postage machine. It's over there. It falls on the buildings. It's kind of a weird expense that goes in there. But the other, also all the electrical bills. fall into it still, which is probably some point, once Neil gets his feet underneath him, move him over to sustainability somehow. Yeah, so we can talk about that, but that's kind of where we landed in the last month over this.
Yeah, thank you for that overview. Lots of moving pieces. While you were still in the office for this process, when the realization sort of arrived, or when the moment arrived that everybody sort of realized, okay, Tom is leaving, Mike is gone, was there any discussion to seeking any sort of term hire for this building and code compliance officer that wasn't approved, with the assumption that there's going to be some vacant salary money here because these positions are not going to be filled at the drop of a hat? I asked that question because I think, speaking for myself and maybe for some other people in the room, there's definitely been some concern that we create a lot of ordinance changes, we create a lot of rules that really rely on our inspectional services, and we haven't expanded our inspectional services, and now we're at a loss with our inspectional services. So how do we get to the point where we can actually start to knock some of these pins down?
I think that the conversations with Tom were, he brought up the idea of this additional position, and his idea was also to make it, that person will be also a certified sanitarian, so they could go out and, instead of having the building department go out and do an inspection, then have the health department come out, have someone do a dual role. It's something that's been talked about before, and I think he didn't have enough of a description of how it would work, and he was going to have those conversations with Dave Greenbaum to try to figure out how to coordinate something like that. Unfortunately, those conversations didn't come to fruition. I think that the next building commissioner, whoever he or she may be, I mean, obviously, the job description for when Mike left, we kind of had to retool his job description, because his job description was like, it morphed daily between what you'd expect him to do. We were nailing that down, and then Tom decided to leave, and then we took a big giant step back, realizing that the new building commissioner, whoever he or she may be, they would want to have a say in who the next buildings and grounds person was going to be. And so when all that happened, that unfortunately got pushed to the back burner. I think that with Dave having, Dave's going to need, if anyone's been over up to the third floor, Dave's going to need more room. Dave's department is expanding every time you talk to Dave. It was alluded to the opioid settlement money that came in. Before in my position as acting mayor, we had 2 meetings with a whole bunch of people around opioid, the fund, and what kind of services that we as a community could provide using those funds. And we were looking at a model that they just completed in Lynn, and one they just completed in Gloucester, and kind of we called it going out on a field trip to go visit those sites. But there could be some monies available in Dave's with some of his grants that could help fund this position. But those conversations never got to the full point that we could have those before they left. But it's a valid point, and I wholeheartedly agree. And I think it's something that would definitely streamline the process with regards to inspections, to have someone who has that morphed ability to do 2 inspections at once. So, but I think it's a conversation that the new commissioner is going to have with Dave Greenbaum to figure out where that position lands and how it's going to be funded. So.
Never should have let Dave get away. See? It took him early, and now he's off the seat. I'm just kidding. Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Just a very quick comment that I'm glad to hear about the extra security measures, safety, the cameras for City Hall, the access being, updated. I think those are all, for the times we live in, and for the care of the employees. I think that's great to hear. Thank you.
A lot of it's there's also the other layer is the signage as well, because We passed the ordinance relative to no firearms in the building, so that signage is, Michael was spearheading a lot of that, so those signs in the works, but also even the signs for the individual offices identifying the fact that the office is a private office, this is not a publicly accessible office. Most recently, I want to say it was in Danvers. A couple people just decided that they were going to stage a sit-in in someone's office, and because the office didn't say private, that they, under what right are you having removed? So they just sat there. So at least if the sign's on the door that says not a public space, obviously the hallways are, this room is, but some of the offices aren't designed that way. I mean, some of the offices have a distinct, where you walk in, there's a counter. So up to the counter is public, but beyond the counter is private. So you want to make sure those are clearly defined, and so that if some individual may decide to try to make a statement about something, that at that point, if it's clearly defined and signed, then you can, we made sure all the panic buttons work now. So you have a panic button, you hit the panic button, you hold it, it alerts somebody, then eventually it goes to the police department, and then they show up, and then if it's properly signed, then they can ask that individual to leave. But if it's not, then you run into an issue. So that's all part of the process that we started to implement in the last month and a half, that the process is ongoing right now and hopefully gets finished up as soon as possible.
Thank you. I did notice some change in signage because there's always been a lack of clarity, like which doorways have the counter and you can just walk in, or other ones that there might be a meeting going on. And it's also for people's privacy that are meeting with someone here. Then all of a sudden, the public's in there. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of the committee, to substitute Mayor McCarthy. The new commissioner, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that person will also be the zoning officer and supervise all the inspectors as Mr. St. Pierre did? Great. And my concern is just a brief one. One of the first things that we did as a council January of last year was to pass a green building ordinance for municipal properties. And I'm very disappointed that when some of the energy work was done to this building in particular, that wasn't adhered to. And one of the responsibilities of our building department is to ensure that those policies, which are really the city code, as you and I have talked about, are adhered to. So it's just a comment, and hopefully things will be a little bit different going forward as we proceed. But thank you for your good work.
Councilor Marcillo.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. The cameras that are being installed, are they monitored cameras?
They go on the same system that we have all our cameras on, that go down to the police department. Someone may not be looking at them 24 hours a day, but they would be, if there were an incident, then they could go back into the loop and find out or if someone were to hit a panic button, then they could go to in real time look at them. But it will be on the same system that is down at the police department through Captain Ryan.
So just to clarify, is the feeling of the employees that the security is lacking during the day or when they're here during off hours?
During the day and during, the concern is if they go back to in-person meetings across the street as well. So we'll be looking to do some
for
work.
boards and things, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because the building is open totally to the public, so anyone can come in.
Okay. All right, that's fine. My other question is about Chapter 40U, which I've been trying to look up here to find out does it cover anything more than snow and ice? I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, but it's not a lot.
Yeah, I think I'm not the best to answer this, but my understanding is that there are my understanding is the solicitor's office may be best to answer this question, but I believe items that are set in municipal in ordinance that have a fine associated with it, that are more municipal fine based. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much of that fully falls under 40U, but I believe some of that can fall under 40U. So I know I think even things like parking violations, I think some communities might even have like a hearing officer that handles 40U and like parking. And so I think different communities address it differently. I believe the city, I don't know whether we have accepted the provisions of that statute or not. But I think that's the example of I think the statute specifies removing snow after snowstorms, things like that. But
I think now that you're talking about it, I think that little clause is in there because it sets a limit on how much you can fine for snow.
Yes.
But everything else is just kind of municipal fines that are set through the ordinance?
That's my understanding, but I'd want to confirm that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I will further, but I guess I'm trying to understand more why he's asking for someone in his department when it could be.
I think it also goes to the fact that now that we've passed different ordinances around different things with regards to Airbnbs or short-term rentals. So if someone was going in to inspect a short-term rental, instead of sending building over and then sending health, that if there was someone who had a position that was more morphed, that had the ability to do a basic building inspection for, to make sure that it met all the requirements, but at the same time, it also met the basic health requirements, that person could do one inspection once as opposed to trying to send two departments to do two different inspections. That was his thought. Once again, he came in with a wish and an ask, but he didn't have the real details behind it because he really hadn't had the ability to talk it through with Dave Greenbaum. But that's what his intention was, to try to streamline the process, especially around some of these newer ordinances with regards to that may require multiple inspections. So,
I mean, I agree that we need new inspectors. We need more inspectors. Everything that I hear, people, the inspection list is backed up. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just for scorekeeping purposes, further explanation about the scope of 40U sounds like one of those things we might direct as an inquiry to the acting director for more information about. I would also offer the suggestion that if we are taking the time to upgrade the surveillance and access control in this building, that the cameras in this building should really be available to somebody in this building. Access control includes the ability to buzz open a door if that's what you need to do, and it still allows you to have people access a property without having a wide open swinging door, and having surveillance cameras that let you see who's at the door is part of that. And that gives you something that's proactive and not just something already happened, let's find out. So active safety is what I'm driving at there. Councilor Dominguez.
Thank you, Chairman Clay. My question is, who is in charge now that Mr. Sampier is no longer?
Vula.
Okay. Do we have in system like an assistant type of program where if something happens in the future, we promote that person into the director for the future?
In order to be a building inspector, there's a bunch of requirements that minimum requirements you have to meet, X amount of years working in the field. If some of that can be substituted by a college degree in a similar field, but at the same time as when you get hired, you're given 12 months to pass the basic building inspector's level. And then once you have achieved that, if you want to go to your commissioner's level, it's like another 6 months to a year. Vula's already attained her initial certification. She's in the process of going for her commissioners. So right now, because she's the longest tenured person over there, she was elevated to acting commissioner at this point. We hired, what is the other building inspector that we hired? What was his name? Greg. We brought Greg on probably a couple months ago, so he's only a couple months into the job. So Tom was getting back to where he wanted to be with regards to inspectors, but then he left, so now we're obviously at a disadvantage. So I'm not sure. That would be a decision for Mayor Pengalo on which way he wants to go with regards to the department, with how he wants to approach the commissioner's position. So
fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, seeing nothing further, just to clarify the pathway forward, we've got our sort of more general administration, we've got fixed costs, and then we'll get to the Board of Appeals. So looking for a motion on the first table. Counselor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the personnel budget in the amount of $733,528, the expenditures budget in the amount of $51,784 for a grand total of $785,312.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the building and inspectors personnel budget in the amount of $733,528, expenditures in the amount of $51,784 for a total of $785,312. Seconded by Counselor Stott. All those in favor? I see 3 plus my own. The matter carries. Public property fixed costs. Does anybody have any additional questions or comments here? Doesn't look like it. Looking for a motion. Counselor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the expenditures budget, fixed cost expenditures budget in the amount of $714,372.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the public property fixed cost expenditures in the amount of $714,372. Seconded by Counselor Stott. All those in favor? 3 plus my own. That carries. Zoning Board of Appeals. I know that we don't have our acting director here, but this is still an opportunity if there's any questions that people want to lodge that they want to have forwarded for information later. You can do that too. I see nothing. Okay. Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the ZBA expenditures budget in the amount of $1,200.
Councilor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the Zoning Board of Appeals expenditures budget in the amount of $1,200. Seconded by Councilor Stott. All those in favor? 3 plus my own. That carries. Anything from the head table that we want to discuss and further in terms of capital improvement? Put it on the table earlier.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. We were just kibitzing about, there was one other budget that we increased through the boards, the amount of time for taking minutes and stuff for the personnel. And this particular one didn't see an increase in the need, but like planning, we had to add more money in because there were more meetings and the meetings were going longer. So we had and I just leaned in, was this one of the ones? And she said, no. I said, okay. Sorry about that.
No, understood. Thank you. If nobody has anything further, I'll take one final motion. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Stott. Seconded by Councilor Hapworth. All those in favor? 3 plus my own. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.